Maverick may go his own way, but he doesn't think that it's the only way or ever claim that it's the best one, except maybe for himself. Let us raise our cups, then, standing as some of us do on opposite ends of the river, and drink together to what really matters to us all, to our crazy and beloved profession, to the movies, to good movies, to every possible kind.
Miss Angie, tell us your thoughts, Angie.
What? Oh, is that a camera?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tell us your thoughts on the recent closure.
If I talk about it, I'm gonna start to cry. That's all I can say. I'm trying to listen to positive music.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
I guess it's bound to happen.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a filmmaker. Dedicated my life to cinema. And the way I decided to do it was through screenwriting. I said if I write about 20 of these, at least like 4 or 5 will be pretty good. It's gonna take me a long time, but I decided to dedicate my life to it. And I did. I've now written 20 screenplays. Lo and behold, here we are, 25 years later, and I've written 20 screenplays. To look through each one of these screenplays and grade them, well, it all started for me. I used to be a big believer in cinema and its power. I used to work at Blockbuster Video, then I worked at a bank for a number of years, now I work at a movie theater. Movies meant so much to me. I used to watch like a movie every day. Slowly but surely, like in my mid-20s, I sort of lost faith in movies to a degree. And it wasn't something I had planned. You know, you don't plan on losing faith. And especially in what you've dedicated your life to. And even though I don't believe in movies as much as I used to, and I still think they can be powerful, but I find them to be more contrived and manipulating than ever. I still sit back and write screenplays. I still believe in them enough to dedicate my life to it. And what else am I gonna do, you know? One of the weird things that happened was around 2005. A movie called Crash came out. We had about 100 copies on our new release wall. And one day I went into work, I worked early, and me and Mike, the store manager, we were told to field destroy 50 copies of the movie Crash. And I always thought this was such a stupid thing. We would put the disc into this crank thing and crank it until the disc was destroyed. And so we did that with about 50 copies of Crash. One of the copies, incidentally, was a pornographic film, which Mike, he took that out of there real quick and ran away with it, as far as I can remember. That was one thing I remember. But so we destroyed like 50 copies of this movie. And I was like, why don't we just sell it for $5? We rent it for $4, just sell it for $5, you know, make some money. But then the movie was nominated for Best Picture like a month or two later. And lo and behold, I come in to work, and Mike and I have to prep 40 to 50 copies of the movie Crash. Brand new copies. So at that point I realized the studios, the people that are in charge, they don't know what they're doing. And maybe even to the degree some of them don't know what they're doing at all, which is not comforting. And it's like, when I don't know what I'm doing, I don't feel good about that. I like to know what I'm doing. That's why I do menial jobs for a living. But I like to know what I'm doing. And when I came to that realization that these people, they don't know what they're doing. And when I saw the movie Crash, I thought maybe filmmakers don't know what they're doing, but it struck me as such a contrived movie. Just none of it felt like it was really happening, right? It just didn't. It felt so forced, and I couldn't believe that it won Best Picture. And it was one of the movies that I really looked forward to seeing that movie, and it just, every note felt false to me. And I think film in general for the last 20 or so years, the notes have felt false. And whenever I write something, I'm trying to create something that these are real people coming into real problems, right? And who they are as a person might determine what they do. You know, they might do something good, they might do something bad, they might travel in this direction or that direction. The thing I want to talk about before I get started going through my wonderful scripts is character arc. There's always been a big stress on character arc in movies. The more I thought about it, how many people do you know have a character arc? How many people do you know change drastically or even a little bit? And now I'm middle-aged, very few people I know have changed at all. I mean, they are the same as they were 25 years ago. Would you go up to your buddy and say, hey, hey Bill, your character arc hasn't changed at all. You're still the negative jerk that you were 20 years ago. When are you going to lighten up? What's going to happen in your life to make you lighten up? When are you going to go and take on crocheting or something and have that character change? And I think there are still, in a lot of my scripts, of course, there are character arcs, but I think it might be a completely false note. We as screenwriters are getting caught into it just strikes me as a false note when a character changes drastically over something that happens in the movie, and it just doesn't ring true. One obvious example is Groundhog Day. Keeps reliving the same day over and over, and by the end of the movie, you don't really like him as much because he's not the same sarcastic asshole that he's been the whole movie. He's become a good person just to get to the next day, I guess. And it just doesn't, it was still very funny, but it doesn't really ring true. Character arc I think about is in the movie The Godfather, Sonny, who is the hothead of the sons. And there's a scene in the movie where Carlo beats up Sonny's sister, and Sonny's sister calls Carlo up, and we as the audience know Carlo by this point. We know he's a hothead, and we want him to be a hothead. We want him to revenge what's happened. We want him to beat the shit out of Carlo. Sonny, I should say. We want Sonny to beat the shit out of Carlo because we know Sonny's character. We know he's a hothead. We want to see that as the audience. We don't imagine how untrue it would have felt if Sonny, once upon getting that call, took a look at his wife and his children and said, I better not. Now that I have a wife and kids, I've seen the error of my ways. I'm a changed man. I'm not going to avenge what's happened to my sister. That would have rang so false and so superficial. We as the audience would have rejected that. And that's what's happening a lot in movies these days with character arcs. I think they're so forced, and they're not grounded in any reality. Whereas in The Godfather, his enemies, they knew Sonny so well. They knew how much he overreacts that they said, hey Carlos, we'll give you some money. You beat up his sister. We know he's gonna drive over there ASAP. Join me on this journey through 20 screenplays. We'll see what I think of some of these dumpster fires of mine, especially the early days. All right, My first effort, back when I was 19 years old, was titled The Blind Run. That was one of the original titles to Rebel Without a Cause, so I remembered that and I stole it. So The Blind Run, and what I remember is that it's bad. Like a gas station clerk and like a drug dealer become friends. They have some drug deals and some things that go wrong. And in the middle of the movie, there's other characters that are introduced, and I don't remember what happens. It's been over 20 years since I read it. I do remember that the script is about 159 pages, which is insane. I also remember that the main character has a horrible death at the end. A rival drug gang, they give him alcohol poisoning. They just keep forcing him to drink booze. I just thought that was a horrible death. We'll get through this slog and I'll give it a grade and a star rating on the old 4-star scale. Grade at A to F. Be a lot closer to F. I've concluded with The Blind Run. Took me 2 sittings to read it. Eye-openingly bad. I would rate it, well, here, let me just go over the synopsis of it. It was just this main character was a drug addict who worked at a gas station, and he would have his buddy rob it. And that was it. That's pretty much what happened. They got into, there was a white guy and a black guy. They got into a lot of hijinks together, and they were very unlikable characters. The writing was very bad. A lot of exposition, a lot of boring scenes, bad scenes with bizarre motivation. I would give it a half star on the 4-star scale, and I would, out of the A to F grading, I would give it an F. My first effort was not good. It was very bad. Yeah, the main character was so unlikable and irredeemable. I wanted to make dark movie with dark characters, but it was just too pointless. There were a couple lines in it that I liked. One character said they were on like a double date in the middle of the script or whatever, and one woman said to the one guy, "You're the worst human being I've ever met," and he said to her, if you think I'm the worst human being you don't get out much. And I kind of like that line. And then there was one other line where my wife left me 2 weeks ago. I'm starting to miss my car. With my second effort, I know I got better because I learned the art of conflict and to avoid exposition, because there was too much, oh, I'm going to go to my car now, and oh, I parked over here, and oh, I got to go do this and I got to do that. It was just too much exposition, and it sucked. So alright, we're about to do our second script here. It's much better than the first from memory. Written in college for a class. Iverson White was my teacher, and he taught me the importance of conflict in every scene. From what I remember about the script, it's the story of 3 brothers. It originally was just 2 brothers, but I added a 3rd brother in later drafts. But they're a highly religious family or whatever, and the youngest son is like a wild man. He's got multiple girlfriends and he's gone off the path. And the oldest son is married to a woman, but he's in the closet. And the youngest son knows that he's gay, and he extorts him for money, and always threatens to tell the family and so forth. So it puts a lot of strain on the older one. Then I added the 3rd brother, who's coming home from seminary school, just on vacation, I think summer vacation, but in essence he's really left the seminary to because he's lost his faith. So he kind of acts as the go-between between the 2 brothers. The title of it is The Day That Never Came. That's the title of the second one. We'll see how it goes. We'll give her a read here. I'll give you a few tidbits. Alright, well, the Day That Never Came, pretty mediocre. At least it came in at only 101 pages. Definitely it was paced better. The three characters were all interesting in that they all seemed to not know who they were and where they were going with the brothers, but each one of the brothers knew exactly where their other brother was going with their life, and so they could see, this is what you're going to do, but each one of them didn't know what they were going to do with their life. So I kind of like that. The scenes that didn't really work were the scenes between the youngest brother and his girlfriends. He's got two of them in it. He's kind of juggling them. Almost forced conflict and just really brought out the bad side of that character. You had kind of that melodrama running throughout the movie. Which girl is he going to decide? And then, like, there's a good girl and a bad girl. And the middle son, he's attracted to the good girl, but she's not interested in him. She likes the bad boy, the younger son. So there's some conflict there. And of course, you had the oldest son, who's gay, but he's married, so he's pretending to be straight, and the youngest son is blackmailing him. Those are pretty good scenes. They're very heartbreaking, almost strangeness to it in that respect. Might be a little bit predictable. Overall, I think I'd give it 2 stars on the old 4-star scale, and I give it a C. It had a good flow to it. Right, you read it and you could see it, and boom, at least it wasn't clunky in that respect. It's not like where it was breaking down new territory really or anything. It just, it was just so-so, but it was much improved from the blind run. So, onward to the next one. Now, the next one is called Under the Undertow, which I don't even know if that's possible to be under an undertow, or being swept away by an undertow. Can you be under an undertow? It's my first attempt at like a police melodrama, and it was very bad. I never even finished the second draft. I know that, like, in the computer, I didn't even type up or write down the last like 10-20 pages of it, but we'll read it anyway and we'll make fun of it, because you gotta go with the good with the bad, and Under the Undertow is very bad. So we got that next. Onward to Under the Undertow. The flow is good, but it's so comically ridiculous. The story of cops. There's like 4 cops. It's kind of like Deer Hunter, but with cops. And it's just so over the top. One of the cops, who's a man, mind you, and his name is Jade. There's a male character with the name of Jade in the movie, and he's actually not a cop. He's a lawyer. He's the brother of one of them. So actually it's 3 cops, and this one was thankfully only 74 pages, and you could see where it was heading, and thankfully it was cut off. But you have one cop he's been divorced, he's been violent towards his wife, and he's the main character. Then you have another guy who's suspicious of his wife having an affair with Jade. As it turns out, he's not having an affair with Jade. She's having an affair with antagonist, I guess. The cop who thinks his wife is cheating is going around and just getting into trouble almost for no reason. And things kind of feel like a Coen Brothers movie at points, where I'm trying to compound bad thing onto, in a comedic way, but it doesn't work at all. Hanging out with a hooker, and then the hooker's pimp comes and she kills the pimp, and he helps bury her, and then he kills her to bury her, and then he almost kills another couple. It's very bad. I'm very disappointed in myself. There's one good line here I wanted to read. So-called good cop. He's talking with a social worker who's helping him with his son. He got into a shootout, like midway through the movie. He gets into this intense shootout where he gets shot in the arm. It's just like out of nowhere, and it's like, well, it's kind of realistic, but it just doesn't. It was right after the very violent scenes with the bad cop. Then you have a shootout with the good cop. It's It's very bizarre. Life has its ups and downs, and he says, he says to her, "You're just an overflowing source of banality." That was a really funny line, something a 30-year-old officer would never say. "You're just an overflowing source of banality." I really like that, but I would give this an F. I would give it a half star on our old 4-star scale. Under the Undertow, let us never speak of it again. Your thoughts on the closing?
I ain't gonna lie, it's kind of crazy because it's like, it's out of nowhere. Like, I wasn't expecting us to just be closed. Like, you know, Marcus Theater is just like, this one, like, Pacific, like, there was a lot of good memories here, like, you know, Lux players coming in and everything, and then we just gonna close like that. It was just kind of blew me a little bit. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, with my fourth effort, Columbine had happened in 1999, and this was about a year later. I decided to put my big boy pants on and try to tackle that type of material of youth alienation in a script titled Tragic Youth. Now, I'm aware that Stephen King had written a book called Rage about a kid who shoots his teacher. King has since pulled the book, I think in an act of hubris, not in an act of saving people, but in just showing how great he is. How do I tell this story? How do I make the first 60 to 70% of the movie compelling? Because we know it's going to end in some sort of shootout. 4 main characters, 4 boys, and one of them was the star basketball player, great athlete, handsome, he's got it all. And then you got 2 kind of wicked losers who are unlikable and kids you know from high school, and then kind of a lovable loser, a kid who actually gets dates and he's liked and so forth. So these 4 characters are all friends, and they've been friends for years, even before high school. Their alienation leads to a school shooting. They plan it out and they think about it a lot, and events happen in their lives where, like, oh, things start to go well, things start to go worse. Are they really going to do this or not? Well, maybe one of the characters will try to do it, 2 of the characters, 3 of the, and then maybe 2 of the other characters will try to stop it. So I figured that would sort of be where the unknowing of what's going to happen, sort of where the conflict is. I think it proved just too difficult for me. I was like 22 when I wrote it or whatever. The characters were just too unlikable, right, for me. I think it was okay in parts, but to get into the characters' heads, I knew there'd be a lot of sex and violence in it, and people would, if it were ever made, people would oppose it and so forth. It's kind of interesting that there haven't been too many movies made about school shootings, right? There was that movie Elephant. Gus Van Sant directed it, but it was just attractive teenagers gazing at each other. I thought it was an okay movie, but it didn't capture alienation really, or frustration that can come up, and just terrible feelings that can come up in high school, feelings of being trapped in high school or isolated. I remember it was kind of preachy, too, and not so much about guns. I didn't think that was particularly interesting. I was more interested in the type of person that would go into their school with a weapon and start shooting randomly. It just strikes me as totally insane. And you got a death wish, right? You're to that point where you don't even want to live anymore, to the point I'm gonna take as many people with me. That's a level of insanity that I can't quite comprehend, but I tried to tackle that, and in Tragic Youth. And I'll give it a read again. It's been many years, probably 20 years since I read it. I think it fell short. Alright, Tragic Youth. What can I say? Way better Then I remembered it. I had forgotten. I had gone back a few years after I had written some early drafts, worked on the characterization, and added a few characters, made it much more compelling. It's almost unfilmable because it's so violent and driven male sexual urges. The first half of the movie is essentially about Francis, and he's got 3 guys that he's friends with that are kind of like the loser crowd, and then like contrast that with 3 friends on the popular side of the fence who are trying to get him to essentially sit with them at lunchtime and spend more time with them, hang out with them more. But Francis is more, he considers them more fake and phony. The first half of the movie is about their basketball season and how things go wrong. After one of their victories or whatever, 6 of the basketball players, including some of these popular players, rape a couple of, like 2 of the cheerleaders, trying to get Francis involved, and he won't take part in it, of course. There's a party, and there's a lot of sexual exploits going on. Think like Rules of Attraction, but like on steroids. Francis like snaps a picture of some of these popular kids in compromising positions, so it makes him a target for these popular kids. And the main popular kid, he's almost like a godfather in the movie. It's kind of odd, kind of can dictate who is liked and who is disliked, who's almost like who's going out with who, and he thinks of himself as like a puppet master. When Francis gets hurt in a fight with these popular kids at some point, their season goes in the tank. Ideas of destruction that Francis and 2 of his loser friends start to take hold again, and Francis has an idea of blowing up the school with nobody inside. He just wants to blow up the school. Nobody really, his friend doesn't really believe that he's going to do this. And originally I had his 2 loser friends kind of be dullards, you know, how most of these school shooting kids are kind of dullards, you know, they're real stupid. I made that kind of realistic, you know, in my first drafts, making them very unlikable and stupid. But I changed it because it was just not a very compelling story, so I made them much more intelligent. I made one of them sort of like Holden Caulfield of Catcher in the Rye, calling a lot of people phonies and fakes. So he's pretty good at persuasion. They're a bit more compelling in that respect. The second half of the movie is just them trying to blow up the school, and when certain things don't go the way they anticipated, the 2 others decide to shoot up the school. It's up to Francis in essence to try to stop it. It becomes sort of a battle of wits and wills down the stretch, and it's much better than I remembered. I was much more into it as I read it. If this movie got made, I would be like the #1 pariah in the world. You know, it can't really be made because I think there would be a lot of copycatting especially of the 2 bad guys, because they're very persuasive, and they're much more. I made them more intelligent, and at the end of the movie they like shave their heads, and it's, you know, very symbolic and surreal. I remember one scene I wrote in the movie that was very surreal, literally, because it was a dream, where Francis is they're watching a movie in class. He falls asleep and he dreams he has a sex dream, and in it, like some of the unpopular kids, he's like helping them have sex with some of the popular girls in school or whatever. As he's walking down the hall, Francis has a sexual fantasy about different girls that you'll meet throughout the movie, and then when he wakes up, he tells his buddy that he had ejaculated in his pants, you know, during class. It's like, I don't know if I could. How would you film that, or how could you put that in a movie, right? It's a bit too much. As we get to the third act and we get to the school shooting, there's just so much violence in it. It just feels too real, maybe. Overall, though, Tragic Youth, it was much better. I would give it like 3.5 stars on the old 4-star scale. I would probably give it like a B+. But once again, I don't think it's filmable. Right? If you made this movie, there'd be too much backlash. I think there would be copycats. You're showing what's going on in the world. It might be just too risky, too violent. It's a script of its time because there's no cell phones really in it. So I wrote it back in like 2000. Period piece. As with many of my scripts, you'll soon find out. It's my first really good one. And then there's a few other things I wanted to talk about. One thing I've always been fascinated by in movies is character logic. I often will, while writing a script and I'm thinking about a scene, I think to myself, would this character do this? Is this too stupid? Is this too over the top? Am I just trying to get somewhere in the story without having this character think it through? Prime example of this is maybe in a movie that you haven't seen, but it's a decent movie. It's a movie called Scarecrow. Came out in '73 with Gene Hackman and Al Pacino. And the movie goes pretty well. Hackman and Pacino are kind of these two guys. I think they were both in the Navy at one point, and they were both maybe in jail at one point. They're pretty much two bums just kind of crossing the country, and Pacino's trying to get home to New York, and Gene Hackman, I think, wants to start up like a car wash service or something. That's his plan. But they're just kind of bumming around and sleeping on the streets and stuff. It's a strange movie. But then once we get towards the end of the movie, Pacino is kind of afraid of going back home to his wife and his kid. I think he might have 2 kids, but I think he only has one, a son. And he's a little timid, so instead of going there, he calls her, and she tells him that his son is dead. His son was killed in some manner, and she kind of puts the blame on him. You weren't there to protect him. So Pacino takes this, not only does he believe it, he takes it to total heart. In the next scene, he has a total mental breakdown, and Gene Hackman's like, hey man, what's wrong with you? And eventually I think Pacino ends up in a nut asylum, and Hackman is trying to help him out. It shows how much he cares about his friend. But the more I thought about it, it just didn't seem logical to me that Pacino's character would progress to that point. Because if his wife, his ex-wife really, is willing to lie about something this big, she's probably lied about other things in the past. So him just believing her without any evidence kind of struck me as a false note. And he should have said, okay, I would like to go to his grave, or I would like to talk to him. When he would talk to someone else in his family or another friend about what happened, to his son. Because if he had just gone home, he would have seen his son was with her. I mean, literally while she's telling him, the son is running around in the background. So it struck me as Pacino's character did nothing to verify it. He's not the most bright of people. You would double check this before having a complete mental breakdown, especially if your wife is willing to lie about this. She's probably lied past as well. So it struck me as the writer wanted to get to that point to show you how much Gene Hackman cared about his friend. He was spending his last buck trying to help him. He was spending all his time trying to help his friend. But how his friend, lost his mind didn't really work. He made no effort to go to his son's grave or verify the story, right? Talk to other family members first or other friends. It's does he have... And plus, he's been away for years. So you would think there would be sort of a disconnect with his son by that point, that, if you're willing to be away from somebody for years and you find out that they have died, you would feel horrible sense of guilt. But I don't think you'd go insane like he did. It just didn't strike me as what would happen to that character, or maybe any character. But so it was just one element. I wanted to talk about. Another thing is just my process in general. Like Aaron Sorkin, his process is he writes a draft of his screenplay and then he throws it away, and then he writes a second draft of the screenplay, and then he goes from there. Well, what I do is I write a draft of my screenplay, and then I delete it. Then I write a second draft of a screenplay, and then I delete that draft. Then I write a third draft of a screenplay, and I keep that one. Then I write a fourth draft, I delete that one. Then I write a fifth draft. And if that one bears any resemblance to the third draft, we might be onto something. A little bit about my process as a screenwriter. I start out with some ideas and I let them formulate in my head for quite a while. I like to think about it for a long time before I even start jotting down anything. Get my notebook out, I make a list of some of the things that are going to happen in the story, and I try to get the whole story in there, some semblance of it. Then what I do is I write a timeline of events in the story, so I just make like a line and I put little bullet points of what's going to happen in the story. I write down each scene, what's going to happen in each scene, and then I write a draft in my notebook, and then I type it up and change it as I go. Sometimes I cross out scenes in the notebook and add scenes, so I'll go at the end of the script and I'll put a little spot where I'm going to add a scene. I don't understand why you would write a whole first draft and then just throw it all out. That just doesn't make any sense to me, right? Because if you have your story and you make your outline, which is critical, so the story makes sense, and so you can time the scenes and everything. First draft should follow the story. Why you wouldn't keep a healthy chunk of it is beyond me, but that's why they're successful and I'm not. I think that the outline is the most important thing, because otherwise when you're writing and you don't know what the next scene is, that's a real bad feeling. So you want to know where that next scene is going. My fifth screenplay was The Midnight Killer. I call it my 5-part trilogy. It's a story of a hitman, different adventures he gets into, and depending on what the story is, sometimes he's the antagonist and other times he's the protagonist, depending on either like who he's going after or what he's trying to do. I thought that was really clever. His name is Kevin Cartez, so you follow him around in 5 movies. The first one is The Midnight Killer, and in this one, his cohort is Joey Isaac, and his new protege is a guy named Alan Price. And the movie starts off with the 3 of them. It's in essence the end of another movie. They're going to get some money back for the mob, so they gotta kill some people. Kevin Cartez is not a particularly good teacher to his new student, Alan Price. Kevin Cartez is an alcoholic, an insomniac. He's a womanizer. He's everything a man fantasizes about. I think a lot of men have these dark fantasies about being a hitman, being a womanizer, getting drunk without the hangovers. But of course he has hangovers, and makes it kind of funny. Cartez and Price are hired to follow a older gentleman's mistress around, who's a young woman, for 3 months, and they have to find proof that she's cheating on him, and if they do, they'll have to find a way to kill her and they'll get more money. They're still getting paid quite a bit just to watch her. As they're watching her, they realize that there's another guy who's kind of following her around and creeping his way into her life. There's a gentleman who's stalking her. He pretends to be a homosexual, so he gets in with one of her neighbors who's her best friend, and they become roommates so he can get closer to this girl named Tracy. Of course, a lot of the influences, of course, are like Pulp Fiction, Mean Streets, and another one, kind of an odd one, is a movie called Hi Mom, starring Robert De Niro. It's an early Brian De Palma movie made back in 1970. De Niro's like a wannabe pornographer filmmaker, and he sets up a camera on a tripod and he's filming people in the apartment across the way, and you see different scenes in these apartments. It's kind of like the movie Rear Window, except a pervert is watching them. Really both start to have feelings for her as they're watching her, because they know she's a good person and she's attractive, and they both start to like her. Alan Price gets a girlfriend, and this girlfriend is the quintessential femme fatale. She is as evil as they come. I made her almost cartoonishly evil, maybe too evil. She soon catches on to their plan and she wants in. And of course Kevin Cortez wants none of that. We have to help this girl. We should tell her what's going on. We shouldn't proceed with this anymore. And so there's a lot of conflict there. And then you have this femme fatale. Her name is Heather Tate, and she comes in, and then at the same time you have this stalker going after Tracy, who's, we soon learn, he steals identities and he's a kind of a nut job. You'll slowly find that out in the sequel. I've read this screenplay at least 150 times and gone over it so many times. I'd give it 4 stars. I'm a homer. 4 stars. Give it an A on the old grade scale. This movie is just, it's a man's movie. I think it would be so rewatchable. It would be one of those movies that once you put on, flipping through the channels, you would just leave it on because it's funny, it's gross, it's violent. The characters are so good, in my humble opinion, that you'd follow them around anywhere. You know, a lot of the times they're just going into like a sandwich shop and stuff and having little fights and squabbles and stuff, and it's just quite humorous. It would be really something to get these movies made, but I don't think it's going to happen because it's not PC. It's probably still my favorite of the 5, and now it would be a period piece because I wrote it back in like 2001. Tragic Youth and Midnight Killer, they were very violent. It was kind of getting to me a little bit. And the next project, my 6th screenplay, was called All Things Under Heaven, and it's loosely inspired by Paul Schrader's movie Hardcore, which is about a father who figures out that his runaway daughter is in the porno business, and he goes to track her down. And in my movie, before pornography became prevalent on the internet, it was through videos, so he tries to track her down. And then there's like a subplot involving like a neighbor friend and his exploits. I just remember it didn't really work. It wasn't that great, but it was a step back in violence, trying to bring a family back together. But we'll check it out. Maybe there's some redeeming elements. All Things Under Heaven was much worse than I remembered. It took place near Vegas, like in a dusty town, you know, and this father's daughter has ran away from home. A series of flashbacks, and we see what went wrong. Dialogue is really clunky. There's a lot of exposition in it. It's like I forgot how to write in this one. The only scenes that I did like were towards the middle, which dealt with the daughter who ran away and her boyfriend. And her boyfriend is in a band with 2 other guys. 2 other band members had cheated with the girl who ran away. Lead singer and guitarist for the band had witnessed it, unbeknownst to the other 3. He felt totally obviously betrayed, so he decided to revenge moment, you know. He didn't know what to do. He was so destroyed. He took a look at his guitars. He's got 3 guitars. We have like a flashback scene, and one of them was a birthday gift from the 3 of them, from his 2 bandmates and his girlfriend. Real expensive, nice guitar. A show at like a college, you know, like in a lounge or something with only, you know, like maybe 50 people there. He decides to pick the thing up and smash the guitar. So the audience is going crazy and they're excited, but obviously the bandmates and his girlfriend are very upset when he does this. I had a tough time writing these more adult characters in their late 40s. Maybe I just wasn't ready to write those types of characters. The dialogue was poor, the conflict, it was there, but it was a poor effort by me. I would give it, All Things Under Heaven, I would give 1.5 stars. Graded a D. The next effort, my 7th screenplay, was Small Time Player. It's ranked in the top 47% on Coverfly, whatever that means. And I was playing around with the structure of it. The structure is strange. The first 25 pages, 30 pages or so of the script, it's just two guys. One has tied up the other one, having a lot of to and fro, trying to figure out, one guy is trying to convince the other guy to leave town, otherwise he's in serious trouble. They talk a lot about characters that we haven't seen yet. Later on, like a half hour, 40 minutes into the movie, we start meeting these characters that they've previously talked about. So I kind of like that aspect of it. It had a lot of humor in it, and it was kind of a film noir type. Sir, what are your thoughts on the recent September 5th?
Plead the 5th.
Plead the 5th? And you, sir?
Shit happens.
Yeah?
Yep.
Alright, my 7th effort, Small Time Player. Very good. It follows Harris around as he kidnaps Ricardo. Well, his real name's Ricky, but Harris calls him Ricardo. Has come to visit his girlfriend instead. Harris is there. Harris ties him up, tells him to leave town. There's a lot of to and fro, and you learn about characters that you'll meet later on. Josie, the girlfriend. Charlie, who's the main bad guy. He's an older guy who runs a strip club, and he kind of thinks of himself as a gangster. His nephew Jones doing a lot of his dirty work, and Jones and Harris are pretty good buddies. Thought he has convinced Ricky to leave town, but Ricky has not. Ricky tracks down Harris, puts a gun on him, and sort of tells him where to go and so forth. He runs into Josie, but we don't know she's Josie yet. We just see her at the bar. Harris gets accosted by two young women, kind of hold him hostage and almost kill him, but Harris kind of gets out of it. And then Harris goes home to his wife. He has a kid on the way, and Ricky tracks him down, and this leads to a final confrontation with Charlie, the wannabe gangster, and who's Jones gonna side with. And then one of the girls who had accosted Harris earlier comes back at the end, and it's got a really weird structure. It's a good film noir, but for modern times. It works really well. I give it 3.5 stars on the old 4-star scale. I give it an A-. I'm a homer. My 8th effort is called The Strange Stranger. A young man whose father has recently passed away. His father was a private detective, so he's become a private detective. But things aren't going so well for him. He's a lonely person and kind of an enigma. One night he visits his father's grave. He's kind of suicidal. He's holding a gun, and you don't know if he's going to shoot himself or not. He hears like the end of like a rape or something is going wrong. Helps the woman. What you later learn is that he recognizes the perpetrator. He slowly infiltrates the perpetrator's life, and you don't necessarily know what is he trying to do. So what he does is he kind of gets involved with his life, and the perpetrator lives at like this flop house with like 4 or 5 other people, and they're all kind of losers, but they all have aspirations to make a movie, can never really make a movie, and it just degenerates into them trying to make a pornographic movie. And when he becomes their friend, he's like, why don't we focus on making a real movie and not a pornographic movie. It's a strange movie, strange script, and it's kind of poetic in a way. Pornography had kind of taken off, amateur pornography, and just young aimless people. Alright, my 8th effort, The Strange Stranger, was very good. He's helping out a middle-aged man who thinks his wife is cheating on him, but it's clear that she's not. He's been following her around for a while. He recognized the perpetrator, and he recognized him from a porno store that he had entered, and he also went to school with him briefly. He goes into the store, strikes up a conversation with the guy, and gets on his good side. The main guy convinces the perpetrator that he's really down and out and needs help. Perpetrator offers him to live at his house, and his house is like a flop house. He's got some buddies making a porno movie, and there's a middle-aged guy with a camera, and his son also hangs out a lot at the flop house. And then there's another guy who's like a junkie. The perpetrator's girlfriend lives there. The main guy kind of befriends all these strange characters. Perpetrator has aspirations of making a movie, a real movie, called The Stranger. And there's times during the movie where he shows the main guy clips from the movie, and it's like out of context, and they're just kind of goofy or insane scenes. Amateurish scenes. The female character that was raped at the beginning used to go with the junkie character, and she has his baby, so it's just like a cluster-cuss of stuff going on, and he's not quite sure if he should continue to help or take revenge. The junkie overdoses. Middle-aged guy refuses to lend out his camera anymore, and he tells the guy that he taped over all the scenes anyway from the movie that they had made. So that sends the perpetrator into quite a frenzied state, rapes his girlfriend, and everybody in the flop house leaders take off. Main guy stays there and tries to do something about it. The perpetrator goes to work. The main guy goes in like a ski mask on and just shoots him dead. The older middle-aged gentleman who's paying the main guy to follow his wife around becomes convinced that the young man is the one that's been cheating on his wife, so he stabs him. The main character, he could stay at his dad's house, but it kind of creeps him out because his dad has passed away, and he just doesn't feel like staying there, so a lot of times he stays over at his sister's, and a lot of times he'll just stay in his car right outside of her place and just sleep in his car, and she'll often bring him snacks in a juice box and stuff like that. The main character is also following around a young woman who works at like a restaurant or whatever, just like a fast food joint, and he doesn't have the courage to say anything to her, and he feels like she may have seen him a few times watching her the night that he shoots and kills the perpetrator. He goes by the flop house, and the flop house would have the lights on and loud music and always activity, but that night it's just totally darkened. And then he goes and talks with the older gentleman who stabs him. The main guy goes to the girl that he's been kind of stalking. He goes to her place and he finally rings her bell, but she's not home. She doesn't answer. And then our hero, I guess, he's kind of an enigma. You don't really know, is he a good person, a bad person? He doesn't want to make pornography. He wants to work on the movie, but at the end of the movie he goes back to his sister's place, and his sister thinks he's just sleeping in the back seat, but he has died. He's bled out from being stabbed, and she sets down some snacks for him in a juice box. It's a good poetic movie. It just works. It moves me for some reason. I don't know why, but I would give The Strange Stranger, I give it 4 stars. I give it an A. I'm a homer. It's only 90 pages. It just goes by real quick, and it's just a lot of good scenes and a very funny dialogue. Once again, the perpetrator, he's very funny and very charismatic, and he's very tall and handsome, and everybody likes him, but he's obviously got a dark side, and it comes out with his drinking. It's a really good tragedy. I think it would be one hell of a movie. Lot 37. father is buried somewhere in here. I have not visited his grave since he passed 4 years ago. Where are you, Dad? Where are you? Where are you, Pop? Lot 37, we have 5,000 graves. There he is. Found it right by this tree here. Little man on Pop's grave here. Oh, it isn't, still not really shape. There he is. Man who taught me everything about cinema. He had dementia the last 4 years of his life. That was not the best of times, but he was in good spirits. He's passed for over 4 years now. Still think about you and dream about you a lot, Dad. Godspeed. Next up on the old agenda, the anti-hero. And the anti-hero is a disappointment, if memory serves. It had a lot of narration. It revolves around guys in their mid to late 20s who are still virgins, and they're trying to have sex with women, and of course they're nerds, so it's a difficult task. They do hang out with a number of women at this bar, and one of the women goes missing. We're led to believe that it's probably one of these 4 guys who might be behind it. They go, I think 3 of them go to Vegas, and I think they witness a murder there. Instead of like flying home, they like rent a car or buy a shitty car and drive all the way back home to the Midwest from Vegas. I just remember it's not good. It's just not compelling, but we'll check it out. I'll give you a little synopsis. Alright, the anti-hero, not too good. I would give it 2 stars. I would give it a C-. It was mainly about a guy who is kind of like the guy from Notes from Underground, in his own world. Loser who's writing a novel. A weird world around him is kind of crumbling. One of his friends, a woman, a beautiful young woman, has disappeared, and you think it's either him or one of his 3 friends might be involved. It's just sort of them getting on with their lives while she's disappeared. Well, the twist was gonna be it was one of her girlfriends who did it, and then tried to pin it on our main character. I had written like 4 different endings for it. Usually I just have one ending that I've thought through, and it's usually works to some extent, but here I didn't know how to end it, so I just kept writing different endings. All bad. This was around 04, 05, and I started getting real sick. I had gotten type 1 diabetes, not to my knowledge. I made a short film called King Me, which is a send-up of Super Size Me, which was a movie about a guy who goes to McDonald's for 30 days and just keeps eating McDonald's till he's sick. In my movie, I play myself, and I go to Burger King on occasion, and I essentially blame all my problems in life on Burger King, and hilarity ensues. Right after I made it, I was really sick, and I almost died. I was almost a member of the 27 Club. I was pretty much on my deathbed. I was down to 110 pounds. I was just wasting away. Then soon after that, I got healthy for about a month, learning how to use my new insulin and all that stuff, and then I got a back injury. My leg was just burning up, terrible pain. I had a herniated disc, once again not known to me, and this went on for 3 months. So for 3 months I didn't sleep much, and I hardly ate anything, so I had gained some weight back up to like 150, and then I was back down to like 122. I was just taking pain pills and eating like a bowl of cereal a day, out of my mind, and almost to the point of suicide. Not because I was depressed, but because I was in so much pain. I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't think straight. Just went on and on and on for months on end. When you're in pain like that, you just you can't think. It's hard to describe, you know. It's all you think about is the pain you're in. So once all that was through, after like 6 to 8 months of getting a dreadful disease, trying to learn how to cope with that, then getting a terrible back injury, then getting the necessary steroid shot, the second one helped with my pain, and then I just had to rehab for a few months my back. Then, you know, coming out of that, I thought, hey, let's write a comedy. As you can see, my first 9 efforts were not a lot of comedy. But the next project was The People Have Spoken, and me and some of my buddies wrote a few scenes, and then I sat down and wrote a whole script, and it's about these 2 reality show producers who are trying to keep alive a fledgling show. The one main guy has had a lot of success in the past, and he thinks of himself as a great artist. Most of the movie they're trying to figure out what this show is going to be about. It's mainly just a bunch of college kids in a big house. The main character just giving them booze and stuff and trying to get them all riled up and stuff, and for no reason. Protagonist, I would have been the comedy guy, falls in love with one of the cast members, and she in turn rejects him, but she ends up having sex with everybody else on the show except for him. So that would be a great deal of comedy there, and it's very funny. So let's give it a read. It's The People Have Spoken. It's my 10th effort. We're halfway through this slog. My only one that I wrote that was just straight comedy, mixture of like slapstick and a lot of Christopher Guest, you know, like Spinal Tap, Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman type humor, that documentary style. That's what I did with King Me, my short film. It's 53 minutes long. If you can find it it's on YouTube somewhere. Not under King Me, but it's somewhere. Even I can't find it. I have one copy in here somewhere. That's another story. I'll get to that in a minute. A few years ago, back in August of 2020, after I was let go from my job, I sent in a bunch of material to Saturday Night Live, including my movie. I put my movie in here and a bunch of skits, like 5 or 6 skits. They sent it right back. So I got all them, and I never pulled the stuff out of here, but in here is one copy of my movie. Yeah, they don't take unsolicited material or something. Why not? I mean, I'm not going to go into a comedy club and start doing this material. I don't know why they didn't take it. But I also sent them a letter, and I'm going to read the letter because it's kind of funny. Dear SNL, I, Mark Brenzel, would like to write for your television program. Enclosed is a funny movie I made back in the day. It has been called everything from tolerable to bearable. Please watch the long version. It has more laughs in it than the short version because it is longer in length. I have also tossed in some skits I wrote. They are clear proof of my funniness, and also I write in the English language. I know in these ultra PC times, comedians are walking on triceratops-sized eggshells. But this is SNL. This is a golden opportunity for edgy satire and cultural hand-wringing. Rest assured, I have never worn blackface. I live in a suburb of Milwaukee. Please get me out of here. It's true I haven't watched SNL in some time. And in parentheses I put, is Dana Carvey still a cast member? How bad could it be? My friends say it's total brilliance, luminous, pure goodness. Did I also mention I've never worn blackface? Lord knows the temptation was there. In all honesty, I need an outlet. SNL was my favorite show growing up. Please, for the love of God, save me. And I put yours, Mark Brenzel. I put P.S. I have never worn blackface. So that was the note I had sent, but they never opened it up. They didn't even try. I just wanted to be a writer. I sent it, and they sent it right on back. The People Have Spoken. Very funny. 3 stars I'd give it. I'd give it a solid B. Some of the scenes here, it's about a reality TV show producer who's quite famous and quite full of himself, and he thinks he's a bigger deal than he is, but in this world he is kind of a big deal. and some of his other TV shows. He's being interviewed. His name is AJ Blazer, and Mr. Blazer, known for countless hit reality TV shows. Then you cut to a still shot of a scantily clad woman on a couch with a needle hanging out of her arm and a bottle of booze in hand. The title Slut Intervention is seen. A still shot of two scantily clad women standing beside a storage locker. The title Storage Sluts is seen. A still shot of a scantily clad woman standing in a living room overrun with garbage packed to the ceiling. The title Hoarder Slut is seen. About himself: what Mozart is to music, or Scorsese is to film, Jesus to religion, Madonna to boorish, slutty behavior, Blazer is to reality TV. He's being let go by a big shot. I'll just read this and cut into the funny parts. He's talking with a big honcho named Larry. AJ, I'm going to have to fire you. You're fired. The show is canceled. And AJ says, do you know who my father was? He was Reginald Lynn Blazer, producer of motion pictures and Renaissance battle reenactor. He was lord of this town, and and flies like you were his loyal subjects, until one bloody day when an overzealous reenactor took off his head with a battle axe. And Larry says, I know who your father was, Blazer, but you're still fired. And AJ says to him with his hands pointed out, you were the one who was fired. Larry says, you can't fire me, Blazer. Then AJ stands up, walks to the door, and spins around. I can do other things, Larry. I designed the largest water ride on the planet. And Larry says, people kept drowning, Blazer. And AJ said, well, Larry, you've made a cuckold of me, but rest assured there will come a time when the tables are turned and I will make a cuckold of you, my friend. Larry says, you're using that word incorrectly. AJ says, you will be the cuckold. And Larry says, get out of my office. And then AJ says, you ain't heard the last of Blazer. And then literally moments later, Larry gets called up by another head honcho at the station and says, we gotta hire AJ Blazer to save this fledgling show. Larry says, I know I just fired you a few hours ago, Blazer, but I need your help. I got something for you. Call it a final opportunity. And AJ says, can I do the show about the wet t-shirt girls? Larry says, no, AJ, something different. I think it's called John's World. Fix it. So you're telling me no on the wet tees. AJ has a weird obsession with the movie The Princess Bride, and he's written a sequel, The Princess Bride 2, The Reckoning. She hates him for him trying to make a sequel to The Princess Bride. But there's one man who was screwed over by AJ in a previous show, and he gets onto this show, and he wants to make a deal with AJ. He says, Mr. Blazer, they're talking in Blazer's office. Mr. Blazer, I'm Bob Leahy, your newest cast member. AJ says, yes, well, run along. Bob says, I have a proposition for you. And AJ says, what? Bob says, this would be more appropriate in private. And Bob says, it involves Molly. Bob says, I've noticed from the show that you have an affinity for Molly Davis. And AJ says, so? And Bob says, she's not playing ball. And AJ says, it's TV, Bobby. Behind the scenes, she's on me. It's more interesting if she rejects me. It's called conflict. Bob says, you don't remember me, do you? AJ says, no. Bob says, I was on Freewheeling Poker Face Boys. Great show. Would have been even better with tits, AJ says. And Bob says, I finished third, season 8, but I want to finish first on this show. AJ says, you and everyone else. And Bob says, you're going to help me. And AJ says, what's your angle, tough guy? Bob says, I'll get you the girl if you can get me the money. And AJ says, how? And Bob says, I have my ways. And AJ says, what's in it for AJ? Bob says, the girl. AJ says, oh, as long as you get the money, right? Bob said, correct. And AJ says, I see. But what's in it for me, old Bobby? I'm not seeing much on my end. Bob says, Molly Davis will have sex with you. AJ says, that's all peaches and gravy to the layman, but what's in it for me, god damn it? Bob said, the girl, Jesus. AJ says, all right, maybe I'm tired. Maybe I've been through one hell of a night. Let me get this straight before anything is in writing, before anything hits the pavement. I secure the money and you get Molly Davis. Bob says, no, you idiot, I want the money and you get the girl. AJ says, how? Bob says, let me do my thing and you do your thing. AJ says, securing the money isn't a problem, old Bobby. What my problem is the girl. Where does she fit in? Bob says, she will let you put your penis into her vagina. AJ says, to hell with these technicalities. I want to know what's on your end as well as what's on my end. I'm trying to play along here, but nothing is coming my way. And Bob gets up to leave. Bob says, I knew this would be difficult, just not this difficult. Mr. Blazer, I want to be the winner of this show. I want to be the people's choice. I know full well you can make that happen because you took that away from me on freewheeling poker face boys. If you don't vote me off tomorrow, I'll trust you that we have an agreement. Molly for you, money for me. Bob exits and AJ says, but what's in it for me? My next two efforts are the two sequels to The Midnight Killer. Kevin Cartez, his partner was murdered, the femme fatale in it. Heather Tate, the girl that he was following around, and then at the end swore he would protect her, but she ends up getting shot. Kevin Cartez thinks she's been shot by the serial killer, but she was in fact shot by a different hitman who was following her around, who was hired by a businessman's wife. It's a little convoluted, but it makes sense in the context of the scripts. Kevin Cartez thinks she's been killed, but in fact she's just been wounded. The crime where she was shot, and he runs into the serial killer, tussles and fights with him, and right before he's about to kill him, the serial killer says, I know where Tracy is. And so this intrigues Kevin because he's infatuated with her. So the serial killer kind of strings him along, ends up like kind of imprisoning him and making him do a bunch of things and strange things. It's a little schlocky. It's still highly entertaining. Mr. Cartez does get his revenge on our serial killer friend, and Kevin is unaware that the Midnight Killer was really the one who had shot Tracy. And then in the third one, a lot of stuff happens, and I can't remember. We'll read the second one, called Hearts of Fear. Hearts of Fear, very good, much better than Remembered. I would give it 3.5 stars. I would give it an A-. We follow Kevin Cartez, the Midnight Killer, Joey Isaac. A few other characters are introduced. There's a corrupt cop, another drug dealer named Jason Ticknor, who becomes more involved in the prequels. The corrupt cop, learn about him and his family, partaking in this hit with, Joey the Midnight Killer and Kevin Cartez, and they find out that he's got a family, and he said he didn't have a family. The Midnight Killer takes him out. He wasn't planning on, I guess you would say, ratting them out or whatever. He wanted to partake in this hit because the hit is worth so much money. Cartez, in the meantime, before doing the hit, he goes back to New York. The hit's going to take place in LA. He goes back to New York. Most of the Midnight Killer takes place in New York. Runs into Tim, the serial killer. We soon learn that Tim does have a cohort that works with him named Joseph Armitage. Kevin also does hits for a mob boss named Tony, kind of modeled after Tony Soprano. I love that show, The Sopranos. When Kevin Cartez meets up with Tracy, he finds out that she is paralyzed. He still thinks that Tim was the one who shot her, but it was the Midnight Killer. At this point, Tracy is suicidal, so she asks Kevin to kill her, and he's trying to tell her that he has feelings for her, he loves her, but she doesn't really reciprocate. And so I make it look like Kevin has lined up the shot and got her in his sights and is going to shoot her in this hospital. I make the audience believe that she's been killed again, just like at the end of the first one. I make it look like she's been killed. Kevin has found out that Tim is seeing Heather Tate being the femme fatale from the first one who messed everything up. Instead of killing her, he makes out with her, and so you think maybe they're gonna get together. Tim's MO is that he like kidnaps somebody, steals their identity, takes their job, or gets a new job, I should say, pretending to be them. He ends up killing them, and usually killing somebody else, pretending to be this person. He's a very strange man. So Kevin tracks him down in the grocery store, and he's waiting in the checkout line as Tim is helping customers, and there's Kevin Cortez, and Kevin at this point is intoxicated. He is a drunk, and Tim's like, well, I got something in the break room to show you. There's a safe right there, and that's not the company's safe, that's my safe. And Kevin is interested, and he's like, let me get the key for it. And when he goes to get the key, he gets a knife and he slits Cortez's throat and like punches him. The cut isn't that deep, it's not fatal. And Tim takes off, goes after him, but can't catch up because he's been injured. And then Cortez gets some duct tape and puts that around his neck to protect the wound. He goes to Tony, and Tony has like a doctor friend to help stitch him up and get the duct tape out. Goons open up the safe. Cortez took the safe with him. Inside the safe was the woman's head that Tim had made Kevin go out with in a series of kind of strange scenes. He's just kind of manipulating Kevin. In the third act, the boys have been following around a comedian, so you think a controversial stand-up comedian, kind of like a Bill Burr type. He's the main target, but they're not sure that he's the target. So after they've gotten the corrupt cop out of the way, comedian is going to be on this live TV show. One of the skits that the comedian does is has an audience member gets offended and mad at him with his act, and the audience member pulls out a gun and shoots him, and the comedian hits his chest and fake blood comes flying out, and he pretends he's been shot, and that's part of his act. Kevin Cortez goes in the balcony, and they had set up a gun up there, and there are people watching him setting up this gun, and he's telling everybody in the audience that it's part of the show. While Kevin Cortez is lining up the shot and about to shoot him, the kid pushes his gun alignment, and Cortez shoots, and he hits not the stand-up comedian, but the host of the show, and he blows off the host of the show. His arm gets shot off. It's like completely shot off. And then there's kind of mayhem ensues. Joey Isaac and the Midnight Killer were both ushers. The Midnight Killer ended up shooting and killing the host. The host of the show ended up being the target. And Cortez, while he's up there, he gets the kid out of the way, and he shoots a couple of police officers or security guards who were about to get the Midnight Killer. Then a cop is on the balcony, and Cortez is next to a kid and the mother. Cortez grabs the boy and uses him as a shield, kind of like Michael Madsen did in Heat, only in this version, my version, the cop thinks he's got the shot and he shoots, and he ends up shooting the kid and killing the kid. So Cortez ends up shooting him. Then the woman comes at Cortez. Cortez takes her and kind of takes her momentum and throws her over the balcony. She ends up hitting like chairs on the bottom below and getting killed. Cortez kind of uses a rope to slide down and get out of there. He's like, everyone's with the crowd. It's just a total mayhem. They think they're getting this huge payday, and at the end you find out they still haven't gotten paid as much as they were promised. And Cortez has gotten together with Heather Tate. Tim, the serial killer, has poisoned and killed his father, and everyone knows he did it. So he, in essence, has turned himself in. This is maybe a few months later. He's being led to the courtroom, and as he's about to talk to Joseph Armitage, who is, in essence, his cohort, but he works in the media, and he's talking to him on like the steps of the courthouse. His head blows up, and Cortez has shot and killed him. The Midnight Killer there is kind of his scout or whatever. And the end of the movie is Cortez telling somebody that it was the Midnight Killer who had killed him. Everyone is walking towards the scene of the crime, and Cortez is walking against the grain. I give it an A-. It's still really very entertaining, very funny, and you're right there with the characters, and as you see them get more and more defined as we go along in these sequels. So yeah, we'll talk to you next about the third one in the Midnight Killer trilogy. which is Hitman with a Heart of Gold. You don't, no? You don't want to talk about nothing?
I'm still
Not over it?
not over it.
Alright, sir. My 12th screenplay, Hitman with a Heart of Gold. Frickin' awesome. 4 stars. I give it an A. The 3rd installment. Joey Isaac has bought a couple of hookers that he travels around with. Supposedly commits suicide. And Kevin Cortez has decided to start writing an autobiography about his life. And what he starts doing is he just writes it on paper and he's sending it into New York paper or whatever. The guy who gets his hands on it and finds it interesting, our man Armitage, he thinks Kevin Cortez killed Tim, decides to go to Vegas. He finds Kevin Cortez because Kevin Cortez and Joey Isaac go to a boxing match in Vegas. He recognizes him on the TV because he's got really good seats because he's really rich. At this point, Cortez has so many people after him. He's got the mob after him, he's got cops after him, he's got the FBI after him because that one FBI agent was killed. Joey Isaac ends up helping that family by giving them a home. Kevin starts helping out with that family. The mob boss Tony doesn't like the fact that he suspects Kevin is the one writing these little excerpts of true crime in this New York newspaper, threatens Kevin, and Kevin pretty much says, screw you. The mob boss sends 2 lackeys after Kevin, and Kevin eventually kills them. One of them gets killed in a really disgusting manner. The 2 guys have gone out drinking that night, and Cortez follows them back to their shitty motel, and one of them's barfing in the toilet, and while he's barfing, Kevin shoots him in the back of the head. So it's like you have all this barf coming out and then all of a sudden all this blood and brain matter. It's just disgusting. What was I thinking? Kevin is still hanging out with Tracy, our femme fatale. Or not Tracy, young woman who was paralyzed by the Midnight Killer, and Kevin still sees her on occasion. And it's been a while, and she now has a boyfriend. The Midnight Killer is kind of tagging along with Kevin Cortez, and he notices that Cortez doesn't like this other young man. So he pretends to be a doctor, and he pretends that he's going to help with the physical therapy for this disabled young man, and he ends up putting him at the deep end of a pool and drowning him. Tracy never finds out. Friend here was murdered. Heather Tate is our femme fatale, and she is still going out with Kevin. She really wants access to his safe. Kevin also has access to Joey's safe, thinking there's a lot of money still in there. So Heather, in another one of her moments of infinite wisdom, decides to burn what Cortez has written. So Cortez becomes enraged with her, and eventually he tracks her down. He gets some money back from her and he kills her. Like that was the last straw. Cortez has a lot of meetings with Armitage and is unaware of Armitage's involvement with Tim, the serial killer. Armitage is very disgusted with the fact that Tim has not become a popular person in the serial killer world and true crime. He's unknown, and it drives him crazy. And when he one point he kidnaps Joey Isaac's 2 prostitutes, and they don't know who Tim the serial killer is, so it really upsets him, and he ends up killing them, killing our hero Kevin Cortez, who never realizes who he is or his importance to Tim. The Midnight Killer has to go, well, after he's been shot a few times, Kevin calls the Midnight Killer and tells him to go protect that family of the FBI agent whom the Midnight Killer had killed in the second movie. So now the Midnight Killer's got to go and protect them from this Armitage guy who's going to go kill them, and he comes and saves the day, even though he was the one who killed the father of the family. And Kevin eventually dies. Midnight Killer goes back. Mob boss is there with some cronies, and the Midnight Killer kills him because he's got a lot of money on his head or whatever that he can collect by killing this big mob boss, and that's sort of how it ends. And the Midnight Killer just walks out the casino. Just a lot of twists and turns, and a lot of different characters. Very funny again, and just you can really feel that Kevin doesn't know who's around that corner, who's coming after him now, who's going to want to talk to him next. And as he gains a lot of this money, he finally gets some money, like the walls just come closer and closer in on him. And then we find out at the end that we thought Joey didn't really commit suicide, because there was a note that he had, like on his suicide note, it said, "You're next, Kevin Cortez." So Cortez took that as somebody is after him and has killed Joey. He thought maybe it was probably the mob. Joey had met with Armitage to talk about the book that was being written, but right beforehand Joey kind of was getting real depressed because he was just buying everything, and he eventually took all his money, put it all down on one bet of the roulette wheel, and he lost. While he was talking with Armitage, he goes into the bathroom and he really does kill himself. And then Armitage just puts the note on him. Joey's safe open. Everyone thinks there's going to be probably millions of dollars, or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars in there. And at this point, the Midnight Killer has felt he's owed it. Tony's been promised it from Kevin. Kevin has promised it to the Midnight. He's promised it to a lot of people, and inside there's only a $1 bill that Joey has left behind. It's only 95 pages. It just boom, flies along. But my next effort, my 13th effort, unlucky number, it's titled The Jasmine, is one of my worst efforts, and it took me like the longest time to write. I guess I was going for more of a poetic type feel again, like I had with The Strange Stranger, taking place in Milwaukee, about kind of this unemployed guy who's helping his brother's wife while he's off in Iraq, and she's just super anxious and depressed about everything. He befriends a black jazz player, saxophonist or whatever. He never really plays the saxophone. He's like retired, going around Milwaukee and trying to find a brothel, playing baseball together and just hanging out, and it's just not good. And it's just a major disappointment. Is my next one. I'm going to read it again. It was just a failed attempt at a poetic film. Unlike Hitman with a Heart of Gold, which was fantastic, the next effort, The Jasmine, not fantastic. One other thing I wanted to talk about was log lines. A log line is a one-sentence summary of your screenplay, and there's a lot of talk about the importance of a good log line. My thoughts on log lines: they're useless. Their practice should be forever banned. You can't sum up a screenplay well in one sentence. You have a lot of twists and turns, a lot of subplots. You cannot sum it up in one sentence. You can't sum up most stories in one sentence. Totally useless. It takes more than one sentence, I'm sorry. So log lines are useless. The Jasmine, it sucked. It took me a long time to write. The supposedly moving scenes aren't moving. The funny moments aren't funny. Characters aren't good. It sucked. And the only good thing about it, it was 82 pages long, so it didn't take me long to reread it. It's just the story of this teacher, not particularly likable or bright, befriending a black Jasmine who's retired, and they just kind of hang out together, and they go to a brothel at one point. Doesn't go anywhere, and it just disappointment for me. I would give it a 1-star rating and a D-. I'm just disappointed, to say the least, in it, and nothing else to say about it. It sucked. Number 14 is Blood on the Tracks, it's called, after the famous Bob Dylan album. What I remember, it's about a gang that kind of goes off the grid and robs banks, and the head is a real psychopath. And then there's like this guy, he's kind of middle-aged, who's helping out another guy who's dying of cancer, trying to get him some money. And the only real reason he joins the gang is because he likes one of the girls in the gang. It's just a downer, but it's certainly better than the Jasmine. Let that dud go to bed. My 14th effort, Blood on the Tracks, about a band of misfits embark on a series of robberies in the South. Their leader is a deeply religious man who is a sadist, impregnates his own 11-year-old daughter. He's very violent. They start out by stealing a car and using one of the girls in the gang as bait, so the guy thinks he's gonna get lucky or whatever, and then they end up beating him up just to get his car. So this group is kind of formed. One of the main guys is sympathetic towards another man who's dying of cancer, and so he helps him by having him join the gang, much to the consternation of our leader and his wife. It's a pretty good movie, a pretty good script. I give it 3 stars. I give it a B. It doesn't like break any ground or anything. It's fast paced, it's funny, gross, and every scene is pretty good in it. It just keeps moving right along. It's only 92 pages. It's kind of sad, and the main character tries his best to help people, but he just keeps messing up. The main bad guy turns on the main guy and his dying friend in one of the robberies, because they notice that he kind of uses the robberies as an attempt also to like molest other women and stuff. He's just a total sadist and pervert. So the bad guy shoots them both, and our hero survives because he has a bulletproof vest that he always wears. And the guy who's dying of cancer ends up dying from getting shot by the main bad guy. The main issues is that on their second robbery they hit it big. They get it while the safe is open, so they get millions of dollars, several like $5 million or something like that. Most people want to quit while they're ahead, but our main guy doesn't want to stop. The guy who's dying wants his cut, and the main good guy wants to stop while they're ahead, and they just get dragged into another heist, and things go bad. The main guy does his best to try to get his cut so he can give it to his family, but when he does get some money, he tries to give it to the woman, but she'll have none of it because she has principles. Giving it to his 2 young sons who are like 10 years old, around there, and he's telling them, do your best to hide it. And it's kind of a funny scene where imagine that these kids are not going to be able to hide thousands and like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's kind of comical. Eventually we watch the downfall of the main character, the girl. Eventually she gets dumped by the one guy and sleeping with the main guy, but then she abandons him. There's a final exchange between the main bad guy and the main good guy, and the main bad guy is killed by his wife because she realizes that what he's done to his own daughter. He gets a menial job and can't make it work, and so he eventually just goes back to robbery, and he robs a liquor store, or a gas station I should say. And he does this towards the start of the movie. When he meets the guy who's dying, he has a tough time convincing the guy that he's a criminal because he's like this kind of goofy white guy. So he ends up just robbing a gas station and getting shot at, and they end up escaping. So at the end of the movie, he robs a gas station and he gets shot, and he does not escape. Talks to a few kids, young people, as he's bleeding out or whatever. They're kind of gawking, hey man, are you an outlaw? And stuff like that. And it's just kind of a sad ending. But it's decent, but it's not anything to write home about. It's a movie theater.
Oh, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My next effort, my 16th effort, is probably my best overall script. It's 5 separate stories, vignettes. Is that how you pronounce it? Vignettes. Very dark humor. 5 different stories, and they kind of interlock a little bit, but just in very subtle ways, not in like, you know, this guy's in both stories, and in this one, you know, he does this, and in this one he does, not quite like that. We'll go over that one next. Hopefully I can go over it in under an hour. Jumping the Shark. What a movie it would be. 5 parts, 5 different parts. There's Jumping the Shark Volume 1, and there's The Clown in the Basement. Jumping the Shark Volume 2, Tricky Tricky, and then Jumping the Shark Volume 3. They're all like 20 to 30 minute long segments. I would give it an A, 4 stars. Fantastic. It's funny as hell. Just to give you a clue as to how it starts, it's 2 guys in a video store and they're talking to each other. Once upon a time, when video stores roamed the earth, will be the first line. Did you hear about Polanski? Yeah. Looks like they might finally catch him. Yeah. Bring him back. Did you hear what he did? Pay me $1 million, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, she was paid off. I mean, anything sexually. Yeah. Can't do anything crazy like cut my dick off. Of course. This wasn't some 17-year-old girl seducing him. She was 13. He drugged her and then he sodomized her. Yeah, it must have been good. You're sick. I know, I'm a sick, sick man. So that gives you an idea of the type of characters we're dealing with here, type of humor we're dealing with here. I apologize if you're offended. No, I don't. In a video store, and this one character's in it is starting to lose his marbles. And one of the other workers there is just a normal guy. Things just aren't going right for him. And there's another guy who works there who used to be in the war in Afghanistan, and at some point he applied for the CIA, and so these CIA agents come to him and ask him for help in order to catch these mafioso boss and a drug dealer who both frequent this video store. So they ask him to kind of buddy up with these 2 guys and try to figure out what they're doing, because they don't have enough time to do this because they're spending so much time listening in on conversations of would-be terrorists and so forth. Managers at the store is going insane and is planning on shooting the place up. He infiltrates the gangsters or whatever and finds a bunch of their loot and drugs and so forth. Intelligence agents tell him to get the hell out of there. He gets out of there, and then later on we find out that the house that they were in had blown up. There was a furnace malfunction or whatever. No one was killed, but all the drugs and money was destroyed in the process. So they had no more use for this young man who wanted to become a CIA agent. He couldn't become an agent because he had health issues. So that didn't work out for him. And then kind of sitting at work, he also works at this video store, kind of daydreaming. And then the crazy guy who works there comes in and immediately shoots him right in the head. And the second story is The Clown in the Basement. Of course, clowns are terrifying to me, as are basements. I know clowns have been used quite a bit. Figures of horror, and I figure, I don't know, they scare the hell out of me so much. I know that they've been used, dozens of times, but they truly do scare me. And this story is more of a drama suspense. The young boy who's seeing this clown in the basement is hallucinating, or it's his imaginary friend or whatever. But the story centers around this teenage girl who's getting into trouble at school. She gets into a lot of fights, and eventually she's sent away to a boarding school of some sort. So she's not at home, and that's when the boys start seeing this clown in the basement. And the parents, one is kind of a passive mother, and the other one is the alcoholic father. And eventually the young boy, he's like 9, he calls the police. The police come and they don't find anything. And this, of course, makes the father even more angry and menacing to the young boy. The boy disappears. And, well, we do see him with the clown. And the clown has a mask type clown. It's not painted on, but like a mask with eyes that he can see through, and he rides around on a bike in the basement. It's just a terrifying image. And they're looking all over the house for him. The mother goes into a bathroom and screams, and posted along the walls of the bathroom are all Polaroid pictures of her young son, and they're just him sitting in the basement. It's not provocative, but it's just kind of a terrifying thought of, here's all these pictures of her son that she can't find, and this pretty much puts her into like a comatose state where she doesn't talk anymore. They can't find this young boy. He's been gone for weeks and weeks and weeks, where the young boy is laying in his bed about to be tucked in, and the clown is sleeping right next to him, and the clown puts the covers over his head right before the mother enters. Kind of a creepy scene. The boy has disappeared, the mother isn't talking, and then the young teenage girl, she starts to investigate, trying to figure out what happened to the boy, her brother. She thinks it might be the father who's behind it, but in turn it is the next door neighbor who's been dressing up like this clown. End of the first segment, which is Jumping the Shark Volume 1. The next segment starts with a montage of these two kind of not so attractive women in their 30s, and it's a montage of them having sex, like dirty sex. It's like the first scene is them, they're like their hands on the stalls in a dirty bathroom while guys are having sex with them, and they're like on a pool table, and then they're like in a truck or in an alley. I mean, it's just disgusting sequences with them, and then they say at the end, oh, what a night, or whatever, and then we cut to this family or whatever, so the audience is going to be like, what the hell was that? And all of a sudden it's Halloween. We see clown, and then we see somebody dressed up as death. They're out at a bar, and then they're talking with these two young women who were in the opening montage sequence of sexual indiscretions. They take him back home, and one of them asks where the bathroom is, and she opens the wrong door to the bathroom, and she just immediately, we don't even see what's inside, but she just turns to the other girl and says, run! The two bad guys, Death and the Clown, kill the women. Our teenage girl has been investigating, and she goes downstairs on another night. Behind the dresser, she finds the guy dressed up as clown, and she freaks out, and the guy falls on top of her, and she's screaming her head off, and then like he's on top of her, and then there's like little maggots are falling out of his eye sockets because they're open, and gets the mask off, and it's a dead guy, and there's maggots in there and all sorts of shit, and she's screaming like crazy, and then the cops come and they find out it's the next door neighbor, but they don't realize that there's another guy involved. The cops just kind of pin it on the alcoholic father, and the detective talks about how he's haunted because he can't find this young boy still. The mother is now in a mental institution. Her new doctor comes in, and he talks about how he had just killed the teenage girl. He tells her to look outside in a couple minutes. She goes to the window and looks outside, and he escorts her son out, and the son is visible right there, and the son pulls down a clown mask, same clown mask over his head, and the mother, who had been silent for who knows how long, starts screaming and going crazy and saying no, and then she's being subdued by nurses and so forth, and that's how that one ends. Then we lead into, I think the most interesting one is Jumping the Shark Volume 2, which is about abortionists. I've never seen a story really about abortionists. What an interesting field of work that would be. I mean, abortionist, he's like in his early 60s. I kind of envisioned Kevin Spacey would play the part before he got into all his trouble. Maybe now it would have to be like maybe J.K. Simmons or something. But I'm going to read some passages. His name is Bill. The very first time we see him, he's drinking coffee, and he sees a pregnant woman, and he's like, a beautiful thing, a miracle, and hopefully a future customer. There's an elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the city. There's an elephant in the world. But what's so interesting about elephants? And what are we without our very existence? We watch him performing an abortion and talking about a recently passed away friend of theirs, and most of it is about these young people in their mid-30s. The three men are abortionists. They get together for like a Thanksgiving type dinner or whatever after one of them's wives has recently passed away from ovarian cancer. They're all trying to cheer him up and everything, but one of the young men tells the widowed friend that his wife had come on to him at one point a few years earlier, and he wishes that he had taken her up on her proposition. So this, of course, leads to a big sparring at the dinner table. Here's another one of Bill's little speeches at the start. He's talking in front of pro-life protesters, but he's talking to the audience as people are protesting around him. He says, "It's hard to ignore people who yell at you and threaten you. A word to all protesters. All you're doing is giving instant legitimacy to the other party's position." And then a man starts shaking Bill, and he's like, "Relax, buddy, I didn't kill anyone today." And then Bill is talking to us, the audience here, and he says, "We're closing in on 60 million abortions in this country. There's only 320 million people in the whole country. I love my job, don't get me wrong, but why not use them? Experiments, an army, slaves, something useful. No, we don't. We give them a one-way ticket to the abyss. It's a wonderful waste. I love it. The only person who loved it more was my late wife, Victoria. God, she hated people, especially these types of people. She'd rather have killed them. I know life when I see it. I am taking life. I call a spade a spade. Never out loud, of course. I have a reputation to preserve." And then there's the next scene. He talks about the people he barely knows, his friends or whatever. "I feel like I should clue you in, tell you something about these people. The truth is I barely know them, and they barely know me. That's the way I like it. This is Emily, cute as a button, married to Luke over here. I've never had a conversation with her. She's always on her fucking phone. Luke, he's a true beast at the office and a true believer. Connor, recently widowed. Con's a follower. If anyone ever fell into abortion, it would be him. He's sleepwalking through life. His wife's death is his first wake-up call. Tanner is married to Abby. He's a nice enough guy, but he's completely uninteresting. In a few minutes, he'll make this a truly memorable evening. Finally, there's Abby, perfection, a true believer, liberal, all of them, and getting no fun out of life." Abby is talking, "I'm so sick of these ignorant idiots. It's my body. Hello. It's my fucking body. It's a right." And then Bill turns to the audience and says, "It's a privilege." And Abby says, "It's a right." And then Bill says to Abby, "Abby, trust me when I say this. No one here would disagree with you." So Bill kind of has his own agenda. He's kind of eyeing up Abby, and Abby is 4 months pregnant. Bill has other ideas about that. And Bill performs back alley abortion with a young girl, and he kind of enjoys doing that, even though he doesn't really need to do that. Bill calls up. It's been 3 years since his wife passed away, so he's kind of feeling depressed. Abby, why doesn't she come over and visit like she did the last anniversary of his wife's passing? She agrees. But Tanner comes with, and he's in the car while she's talking with Bill inside, and then Bill decides to drug Abby and perform an abortion on her, much to her dismay. Trying to reason with him, "Bill, what are you doing? Isn't it clear I am helping you practice your right? Oh no, don't you hurt my baby." And Bill says, "It's not a baby, it's a zygote, it's a fetus, it's a clump of cells, it's like a cyst." She's like, "No. As your doctor, I think this operation must transpire. No, it's my baby and I want to keep it." And Bill says, "I don't believe that's in your best interests." And she's trying to save him. And Bill turns to the audience one last time. He says, "One might say I'm becoming unhinged at this point, but I still feel very hinged." I like that line. Tanner is in the car, and he eventually has to urinate so bad, showing up out of nowhere, and saves the day. And I should mention, after the back alley abortion Bill has performed, he has, as he did earlier on, he takes the fetuses and often tosses them into his fireplace and watches them melt. This is Bill. He's got a fire poker and he's poking at the fetus as he's just tossed it into the fire pit. And Bill says to the audience, "Do you believe you have a soul? I bet you do. What of this boy's soul? You value yours, I'm sure. What value, I wonder, would you give his? I don't know when life begins, but I do know when it ends." As it's melting, the next scene dissolves into eggs being cooked over the stove. Abby is cooking eggs. That's my type of sense of humor. Sick man. Bill at the end has got Abby, on a gurney about to perform an abortion. He's hit in the back of the head with the poker and pulled out by Tanner, who's killed him. Abby talking to a police officer, and then you hear a toilet flush because Tanner had to go to the bathroom. Tanner comes out. Abby says to the officer, "Like I said, he tied me up and tried to kill my baby." And the officer's taking notes, and he looks around and he's like, "And where is your baby?" And then Abby and Tanner both point to Abby's stomach and yell, "Here!" So it's kind of like, it's a baby when we want it to be a baby, but it's a clump of cells when we want it to be a clump of cells. It's kind of me pointing out the hypocrisy of the issue. It'd be probably difficult to get this made. I don't care. I think it would be hilarious and awesome. And let's move on to the next story, which is Tricky, which is the story of two young men in their mid-30s who kidnap a 19-year-old college student, and they put her into a windowless room, and there's a camera in there, and one of the men is very aggressive with her and takes advantage of her, while the other one is very kind to her and talks with her and brings her food, and she begins to really like him. Stockholm syndrome sets in, and after she's been there a few weeks taking advantage of her, while the other guy is really nice to her, the one good guy frees her, gives her a gun, says, "You can shoot me right now, which would be in your best interest." She's like, "Well, let's go get the bad guy first," and she does shoot and kill him, and he's kind of amazed by that. He asks her if they want to go away together. She says yes, and then they start making out and stuff, so it's kind of cringy, right, that one of her captors is making out with her. "Go get some stuff from my apartment." So I go to the apartment. He's like, "Let me get some stuff from the kitchen," and she's like in the living room, and she sees pictures of him with his wife and two kids. She's carrying one of the pictures, and she goes into the kitchen and drops it, drops the picture, and sees in front of her is the whole family is sitting there, and in the corner playing the video of her being taken advantage of by the one other guy, and it's just a real creep show at that point. So she still has the gun. We cut to just the door of the apartment. We just hear all the shots going off, and then we hear Alice and the girl scream at the end, and then one more gunshot. So she's killed all of them and then killed herself. It's real heartwarming. No, it's a disturbing one. And then our third one, it's about a man entering the afterlife. The main guy in the afterlife is an angel. You can't really trust him because he's a kind of a comical and he's kind of a trickster type god almost. He first thing he does is he wants to play ping pong with the guy who's recently died, and the guy's like, "I don't really want to play ping pong." He's like, "Oh, come on, how about just one game?" And he's just firing the ping pong back past him so quickly, and the guy's like, "I can't even see the ball. What's the point of this?" And he's like, and the guy tells him, "It's not how you play. It's not whether you win or lose, but how you play the game." And he just keeps zipping it past him, so it's kind of insanity. He exposes the guy who's died to the general population, and almost everyone has made it into heaven, including Muhammad Atta, who was one of the main hijackers in the 9/11 attacks. And he's in heaven, and he's complaining that he wants his 72 virgins. He still hasn't gotten them yet. Angel gives him 72 women, and he's like, "Oh, these women are so beautiful." And the trickster god Angel says, "Well, there's just one thing, none of them are virgins." So it's, he's like, they got experience. People want the real God. They're tired of him. The main guy who's just passed away, he just wants to see his young daughter who died tragically at the age of 6, and she was hit by a car. So the angel is like, "Well, we'll get to that." And he keeps saying, "Well, we'll get to that." And then eventually they awaken the real God, and the real God is more matter of fact, and he kind of talks like the God of the Bible. And he has some words with Muhammad Atta. The trickster god shows alternate universes to the guy who's just passed away. Like, this is what would happen in your life if you had made this decision. This is what would have happened if you made that decision. But they're clearly false things that he's showing him. He's like, wouldn't you like to have seen what your life would have been like if you had won the lottery? He's like, oh yeah, of course. And he's like, no, you never won the lottery. You got to play the lottery in order to win the lottery. You got to be in it to win it. And then he shows him one of his friends wins the lottery, runs for president, wins, and then goes completely insane. If he had asked out the prettiest girl in high school, she would have not only went out with him, but had like sexual experiences with him, and they would have, been together or whatever. And the guy's like not believing it. He's like, this wouldn't have happened. He's like, no, it did happen. If only you had asked her out, this would have happened. But when God appears, he says there's only one reality. There are not many realities. There's only what is, not what we also want to be. He does get reunited with his daughter. The daughter and him are supposed to enter into the sphere of light. How when people have a near-death experience, they're often going into the light. Beforehand, the angel puts on sunglasses because the light is blinding him so much. The guy's fearful of going into the light, and he's assuring him that there's nothing to be afraid of. This is your final resting place. This is home. You have no reason to be afraid. And then him and his daughter, they finally go into the light, and the angel at the end says, they went in there. I wouldn't. So and that's how it ends. And then it ends with the song Jumpin' Jack Flash by the Rolling Stones, one of my favorite, if not my favorite songs of all time. Like I said, there's very few things that connect the stories all together. It's just a few little things. Volume 1 and The Clown in the Basement is the house. The Clown in the Basement, the family lives in this house, and it's the same house that the drug dealer has in the first one that blows up. So you'll see the large dresser. The clown is behind will be the main guy is looking for the drugs and money or whatever in the basement. Volume 2, which is about the abortionists, and Tricky Tricky is the SUV. Tricky Tricky exists first. The woman shoots and kills the bad guy right in front of his vehicle, and he gets shot in the chest, and then the bullet lodges in the SUV. In Volume 2, when Tanner parks with Abby in the SUV as she goes to meet up with Bill, the bad abortionist, you can see a bullet hole in the door or whatever. So that'll be the connection between those two ones. And then in Volume 3, which takes place in the afterlife, all the characters that perish from the first 4 stories are seen in the background. If I could make it as my first movie, it would be one hell of an undertaking. I would love to do that one. The odds of it getting made are it's just these PC times. I don't know, man, because this is some dark material, making fun of a shooting type atmosphere, children getting kidnapped, abortionists, just making fun of the whole abortion issue, women getting kidnapped again, and then the afterlife where you're dealing with like a trickster god where you don't know if he's really God or not. The whole thing would make people very uneasy. I would get a kick out of it, obviously, and I think most of you would get a kick out of it. I would want total autonomy. There would be nothing about it that I would back off of. Nothing could be changed, right? Because it wouldn't be worth making. And it's got my highest score on that Coverfly. People reviewed it, liked it quite a bit, but not enough to stick their neck out. But yeah, Jumpin' the Shark, 4 stars, an A. And I'm starting to have a low, so I better have some sugar. What are your thoughts on this classic place soon to be closing its doors?
Not my problem.
Extreme close up.
Mark!
Just kidding.
No, that's not my problem.
I know.
It's
his problem.
What's my problem?
Damn, little bro, he blaming you.
So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the closing of this staple of Milwaukee?
It was gonna happen eventually.
Day of the Dragons. Very disturbing. Listening to the TV, and they were talking about some ridiculous legislation or whatever they were trying to do, and I said to myself, what are they going to do next? Legalize pedophilia? And when I said it out loud, I stopped dead in my tracks, and I had the whole movie in just a few seconds. He was a private detective who was searching for a prepubescent husband for some politician or ex-politician. His children are in essence sold to richer pedophiles or whatever, and that this detective would have been a victim of that. And I had him being reluctant to join the resistance. Put it in the year like 2199, and if you're not pro-pedophilia, you're called a pedophobe. You have to accept the fact that pedophilia is normal. If you don't accept it, you're kind of looked down upon, cast out. But everybody kind of secretly deep down knows the truth, but they can't say it. That's the kind of environment that's become America. And the first shot of the movie in New York City, and where Statue of Liberty would be, the Statue of Liberty is no longer there. And it's never explained why. It's just like you slowly zoom into the city, but where the Statue of Liberty is supposed to be, it's not there anymore. And we follow around this private detective, and he used to be a well-established detective, but he eventually quit because sexual assault on children, and it would be pushed under the rug, and he couldn't explore those avenues because powerful people wouldn't allow it in the police. Very poor now, and he lives in a dump and tells them how many credits they have, and you only have so many credits you can use towards food, sex, drugs, everything. They try to control you. Allotment of credits that everyone gets. It'll tell you if you're using enough of your credits, for sex or for drugs, you're not intoxicated again. What's wrong? He helps out some kids who are running away from their abusive spouses or whatever, and he tries to help them, but he can't really help them. Early on, he saves a girl's dog. He finds a girl's missing dog. She's 13 years old, and she's like, hold on one moment, after he finds the dog, and then like an older guy comes out in his 40s or whatever, and I was so glad I could help your daughter. And the guy says, that's not my daughter, that's my wife. What are you, a pedophobe? We meet like one of the politicians who's an open pedophile. The main character's cousin, and his cousin has a young boy who's being scouted, and these scouts go around and they try to get the young child to sign paperwork so that they become, in essence, property pedophile who can afford them, and then the pedophile pays off the family in credits. You can get hundreds of thousands of credits. The child agrees, and one of the parents has to agree to it, not both of them, just one of them. His cousin wants the private detective to get him a gun, and the private detective's like, I don't even have a gun anymore. Ever since I quit the force, they took it away. He says, well, I need it as a threat against this guy who's scouting my son, so eventually he agrees to get him a gun, and of course eventually he uses the gun to kill the scout who's scouting for a pedophile. Pulling the strings is the private detective has a friend who's a politician and kind of a mover and a shaker, and secretly he's part of the Dragons, and the Dragons is a group that is against pedophilia, but they can't say it out loud. But this guy helps the private detective only serve less than a year in prison. Serial killer that he had put away. The serial killer thanks him for sending him to prison and wishes him luck. And eventually his cousin's wife, pressured by this pedophile and some people of the state and a lawyer, come to see her and her boy, and she's of course a drug addict, and so she agrees to let him have her boy. Let me just have one more night with him. And then in that night she drugs and kills her own son, and then kills herself, and then eventually The guy in prison ends up killing himself. So it's a lot of suicide and murder. It's terrible, as this type of society would create a lot of terrible situations. Politician who helped get him a lenient sentence has a job for him to find a prepubescent spouse, prepubescent husband of this former politician, who we met earlier in the story. He goes to this guy's compound. It's like a huge mansion. He's got many mansions. He's got like 24 husbands, one for each hour of the day. He pretty much knows where his prepubescent husband is. He lent him out to another politician, another pedophile, who almost became the president of the United States. The Private Eye is a very frank politician, saying he knew that the straw purchase was going to be to protect him from a pedophile, so there's kind of clash a little bit there. He says, I'm not a pedophobe. Politicians still trust him to go find his prepubescent son, which he does. He goes to this other politician, but he goes there, and this politician has like 84 wives and husbands. They're having like a pool party, and he's like essentially raping one of these kids in full view of all the other kids, and it obviously bothers the private detective, and he's got to go to the bathroom and convince himself he's not a pedophobe. So he's pretending to be somebody else, and eventually gets the kid out of there. He gets 25,000 credits for doing this job, but eventually, right away pretty much, they all get stolen because he ends up sleeping with a young woman who's addicted to drugs, and he's got nowhere to go but the state. And the state needs him to, because he's a registered pedophobe, he has to go to some training at this institute in order to become a more enlightened citizen. And it's there he has to go, and he encounters this nurse, kind of like a Nurse Ratched type character, but even more disgusting and overweight and just a horrible person, and trying to teach him that pedophilia is natural, and trying to brainwash these guys by having them watch movies and child pornography and stuff. It's just sick beyond belief. Breaks down and weeps, while watching one of these movies, and she's like, I knew it, you were a pedophobe, I knew it all along. Broken out of that institute by the politician and some other people, and they go and take on the politician at his compound, and they give the kids a bunch of guns, and they're shooting. They all have guards and stuff, and at these compounds, and there's like a Day of the Dragons in essence, where the kids are slaughtering oppressors in essence. And there's other scenes in there as well that I can't all go into and I can't all remember. Very depraved. I think people would go see it because it's like, have you heard about that movie? There's a movie where in the future they've legalized pedophilia. I think it could happen. Hope and pray it doesn't happen. But I'm sure people would have a lot of tough time with this movie, as I would. I think I would give it an A or an A minus. I'll go A. I'll give it 4 stars. Comes in at 101 pages. Write something again that maybe I could film myself. And it was a script called Lucky Gun. And it's about a gun that whomever the guy lends it to, they end up getting away with whatever crime. One of the characters steals the gun from one of the characters who owns it. He steals the gun from him, and then that's when things go bad. If you just asked him for the gun, then maybe the crime would have been a success. My 17th effort was Lucky Gun, and in this one I kind of returned to something that maybe I could film myself, but then COVID came along in 2020 and kind of nipped that in the bud. It's essentially 3 intersecting stories where 3 different characters borrow a gun from this drug-addled loser. The first one is a screenwriter who has lost his screenplays on his computer. One of my big fears. So he hires a buddy of his that he hasn't seen in quite some time to help him retrieve his scripts. He takes his computer and essentially blackmails him, saying he's going to delete the scripts and put kiddie porn on there, and then eventually he's like, I want your car, and he just keeps going on and just wants to threaten him with it, but ends up shooting and killing him and hiding the body, and eventually the body is found and everything, but he's never a suspect because there's no connection between the 2 characters, because one guy was blackmailing him, so he didn't tell anybody he was even in contact with him or anything, and his phone was never found. But the guy's got incredible guilt from that. And the second story is about a guy who, his father, he has dementia and he's in a home, and he was being extorted by a woman, wants to get into his father's house because he can't get in because the locks were changed on the door, and he wants to get his father's glasses out of there so his father can see. Borrows a gun, threatens her with the gun, gets the keys, gets the glasses to his dad. Well, at the end of the first story, when he gets his computer back, everything is still in the same position. He still doesn't have access to his scripts. So he finds another guy who fixes it in like 30 seconds. So, and then with this one, he doesn't do anything to the woman. He just threatens her with it. He gets his keys back for his father and gets his glasses for his father. Then the third one doesn't work out so well. Not that the first two did. An escort, and one of the guys that she's seen is creeping her out, and her boyfriend, yes, her boyfriend, who convinces her to become an escort for financial purposes. Her and the guy get together, and she checks in her purse, and the gun is not in her purse, so she kind of freaks out. Her boyfriend comes upon the scene, and he has the gun, and then he tries to extort the older fella, who's a pastor. So they go to like ATM machines trying to get money out, and he finds out how much money they have with the receipt and everything, and got his information on it and so forth. The girl is trying to convince her boyfriend, they've gotten enough money off this guy, let's stop extorting him. He gets mad at her and starts beating her up and choking her and stuff, and he sets the gun down. Then the pastor gets the gun and shoots and kills through the back. He shoots, goes through, and it hits the girl as well. She's still alive, but when she goes to call 911, he freaks out because he doesn't want to be involved in this scene. He ends up shooting and killing her. Then he just leaves the scene, and he's never found out. The scene took place at the young woman's friend's house. Is also friends with the drug-addled friend whose gun is still missing at this point, so he's wondering where the gun is. And when they go there to visit this girl, it's the young man from the first sequence. She's like, well, the cops, they questioned me and they haven't found out what happened or whatever. And then the only thing they left at the scene was this jacket, and it's the guy's jacket who got shot and killed in the back, and inside the jacket is a receipt, $500 from this guy, and it's got like some of his information on there, who he is. So they track him down, and the drug-addled guy tries to extort him for money because he's like, hey, I know you're involved in this crime, and that doesn't go so well, and they get threatened at the end, and a bunch of kind of crazy stuff happens at the end that I won't get into. It's a decent enough effort. I would give it 2.5 stars. I give it like a B-. Quirky, and once again you got characters that, kind of the story I like, where characters start doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. Normal people getting involved with crime. Things go very, very wrong. They should be calling the police. One criticism I got by a few people is the characters are kind of stupid in this one, and yes, they are kind of stupid because they don't call the cops, but they're under threat, their indiscretions or whatever being found out, so there's reasons why they don't call the cops. I try to put reasons in there. Maybe they're not good enough, but a decent enough so-so effort. The next one is the 4th chapter in the Kevin Cortez saga. It's a prequel, and Cortez is hired by Tony, the mobster, to track down a gambler who owes him quite a bit of money. Kevin, instead of just killing him or trying to get money from him, doing his job, he ends up befriending him and trying to help him with his gambling debt, but they end up just getting into more and more debt.
A camera for what? That looks like a bad guy bag. And be on camera.
I gotta see it once with the hat on. Oh yeah, look at that.
Okay.
Taking it up a notch.
Don't know who I am. But yeah, got a band together.
Look at that, looking good in the neighborhood.
Hey.
Alright. The fourth installment of the Kevin Cartez saga is A Man Out of Time, and it's about Rusty, who's a gambler. Kevin is called in by Tony into his office, and Tony is sleeping in his chair. He's just sitting there sleeping. So Kevin takes some little bits from a notepad or whatever, makes little spitballs, and just keeps throwing spitballs at him till the point Tony is covered in spitballs. This gives you an idea of their relationship. So Kevin is hired to kill Rusty. Rusty apparently owes Tony 55 grand. Rusty's connection to Tony apparently had died of natural causes. So Rusty is in Vegas. So Kevin watches Rusty for a week. He has a lot of girlfriends. He's a handsome man. He's kind of haunted by his father's death. His father committed suicide by going into the Mojave Desert and just letting himself die of dehydration out there. So Rusty is kind of haunted by that, and a wife and a stepson. But he's got all these other girlfriends, these strippers, prostitutes that he's entertaining. Cartez meets up with them and says, I'm not going to kill you, I'm just going to help you make some money. Trying to get on Tony's good side. But Rusty's freaking out because he doesn't really believe that this can happen. Rusty's stepson is 18 and in high school, and he's been dealing drugs. So Rusty and his mother are very upset with this, and they're trying to get him to stop, and Kevin Cartez eventually gets involved. First time he kind of yells at him. The second time he gets into a fist fight and beats up the kid. Kid is like a big, clumsy, man-child. It's 300 pounds. He's huge, but Kevin beats him up, and then he's still dealing drugs, so Kevin eventually hits him with his car, about 10 to 15 miles an hour, a little love tap, as he's walking on the sidewalk. And that finally gets the young man to stop dealing drugs. The character, Jason Ticknor is his name, and he's a drug dealer in the LA area, and Joey gets involved because Kevin is kind of putting off giving updates to Tony, so Tony sends Joey in to see what's going on and to help out. They all get together, and Jason Ticknor has a plan. They have a college referee on the take, throw a game, and make a lot of money from this. It actually works. It's quite a success. I want everyone celebrating and getting intoxicated. Rusty escapes. He had escaped once before. Kevin had tracked him down. Kevin threatened him to not do that because he could kill somebody he loved. You find out at the end that Rusty kind of assessed that Kevin was not going to kill him, so he was willing to take those types of chances. So Rusty escapes, but then the college ref throws the ball game, has been abusing some of the women that Jason Ticknor has been giving him, and one of the girls that Rusty was fond of decide they want to get rid of this guy, even though he's kind of been their meal ticket for a while. Thought that maybe he's gone out to the desert to emulate his father's suicide. Kevin Cartez goes out there, finds Rusty's car. Rusty's not out there. Runs in with a teenage girl who's out there. She was inside the car and she had driven it a little bit, and she was kind of a suicidal girl. And Kevin had brought water out there, so he gave her some water. And then they go searching around for Rusty. Kevin then drops her off at home. They don't find Rusty. And what they decide to do is lead on the college ref, thinking that he's going to get laid again, and instead Kevin Cartez comes in and shoots him a couple times. Before he kills him, he shoots him in each ass cheek. Then he kills him. I think that's funny. Some people might not think that's so funny, but I think that's pretty funny. And then they put him in Rusty's car, blow up, sets a blaze to Rusty's car to make it look like Rusty has been killed in there, so Kevin can tell Tony that the job is officially done. He's wandering around in a casino and he runs into Rusty, and they have a little chat or whatever, and Rusty's talking about how he always looks over his shoulder thinking Kevin's going to come back and kill him, and this is, his nightmares finally come true. Kevin says, I'm not going to kill you. Rusty is with another beautiful woman, and Rusty kind of had gotten the better of him, but Kevin just sort of accepts it. By seeing Rusty, he's reminded of the teenage girl that he kind of saved in the desert, so he goes and visits her, and her life has greatly improved. So Kevin Cortez is very happy about that, but that's like literally Cortez is about to go meet his end right after that, so it kind of ties in with the third one. And I would give it a 3.5 stars. I would give it an A minus. It's only 90 pages, so it goes along real quick, and it's very funny. It's got some good twists and turns. And then the last one, entitled No License to Kill, 5th and final installment. This one's a prequel to this prequel. It's Kevin Cortez helping out Jason Ticknor. It kind of starts off as like a police procedural where these two brothers are truckers and there's serial killers going around kidnapping and killing women. One of them that gets kidnapped is Jason Ticknor's sister, which is not a good thing if you're one of those truck drivers. Hires Kevin Cortez to help track down her killers, and it's just a question of who's going to get there first, these law enforcement or Kevin Cortez and Joey Isaac. Build up some of the characters in the police force, who they're looking into is who might be the killer and where they might be, and Kevin Cortez is tracking them down. So I can't remember all the details, but it's pretty exciting, and it's a fitting finish to my 5-part trilogy, I call it. No License to Kill. It might be the best one. I think it's fantastic. You have two truckers at the beginning and they're arguing whether or not they should get a gun or not, and then you find out that they're serial killers. The trophy they keep is like a set of keys. They always take a key from somebody and they have a huge keychain, 37 keys on it, and then throughout the course of the movie goes up to 40 or 41. So this older cop is hot on the trail. The two brothers, one of them mainly wants to stick with like prostitutes, lot lizard type women, and the other guy he wants to go towards younger, more attractive women. The other guy saying no, we don't want to draw too much attention, and he keeps in contact with other cops throughout the whole state because these guys kind of have a MO. It's in California. Goes back to the scene of the recent crime just to kind of clear his head, and because it's been like a month or two and he hasn't gotten anywhere. And at the scene of the crime is one of the truckers. They get to talking and he realizes that he's one of the perpetrators, and so he chases after him, and in the context of while he's chasing after him, he clutches his chest and has a heart attack and dies. Before that, I kind of show him spending some time on leads that go nowhere. People think, oh, my son might be the guy, or this mechanic might be the guy, or, they're spending a lot of time kind of hassling, or not so much hassling, people that have nothing to do with it. The next person up is a female, and then she goes on and tries to solve the case. One of the next victims is like an 18-year-old, high school beauty. It goes unsolved for a month or two, and family hires a private detective. We follow him around for a while, and he goes to the authorities to look at files, and they're kind of cooperative with him, and he gets a lead that says she might have been sold into Mexico, into the sex trade. So then he tries to follow that lead, and when he goes down there, he thinks he has found her. He brings her back, and then when he meets, and she's been drugged, so she's really out of it, and then when he meets with the parents kind of gasp in horror. They tell him, this is not our daughter, and so he's quite devastated. They're devastated, and he still takes this young woman back home. And then later on in the movie, he decides to go back to Mexico to the place where he found her, and because there was like 20 or 30 other girls locked up in this place. Because he paid so much money, he earned like a privilege that he could come back anytime. So when he goes there, he frees all these girls, and in the process he gets killed, and then he dies trying to protect one of the girls, so they all escape except for one, and he gets killed in the process. Another element too is when he first meets, I guess you'd say the head pimp or whatever, he kind of has to prove that he's not a cop, so he starts fingering a young woman in the bar that they're at or whatever against her will, just to show you that he means business or whatever. And then later on, when he comes to free all those girls, one of the girls that's trapped down there is this one woman, and so he got to apologize to her for what he did to her. He was just trying to get in the good graces of this pimp. Our trucker friends kidnapping and murdering a girl by the name of Michelle Ticknor, sister of Jason Ticknor, who we met in some of the other Midnight Killer movies, and he's heavy into the narcotics trade, and he's a kind of a bad guy. Pays a large sum of money to one of the police officers that we've kind of followed along a little bit to give him information before it gets to anybody else. So because he wants to kill these two guys. They kind of know it's two guys. He wants to kill them before they get incarcerated, because he says he's been to prison and he doesn't want them to go to prison. He wants to kill them himself, or have Joey or Kevin, whoever gets there first, kill these two guys. So it's kind of a race. We follow Kevin around a little bit. He's just hanging out at truck stops or whatever, and Joey's hanging out in Southern California truck stops, and in Northern California Kevin Cortez is hanging out in truck stops. And then eventually they get a woman sees another woman go with these two truckers, and she gives a great picture. She draws a picture of each one of them, and she knows who they work for because she sees the truck that they're in. So that kind of narrows it down for them. But they're given some false information, and they're given like a incorrect license plate. But Kevin Cortez, because he saw the picture of what they look like, he spots them in this truck stop that he's been hanging out at. He follows them, and then it just has a great ending, just off the charts, cathartic. I'm not going to go into it too much. You're just going to have to wait and see for that. You're going to have to sit through 5 movies before we get to that. 4 stars, it's an A, and it might be my favorite. Midnight Killer is longer because I stay with the characters a bit longer. You build them up a little bit longer, and then the next 4 movies are a bit quicker. A little more action, but a little bit quicker in storytelling. It's the last one, and now we're on to the last one, number 20. I would love to make them someday by some miracle. We'll get to make them, but here's holding out the hope. Catch you with the next one, the last one. Look both ways. Well, we made it to the 20th and final script, and you're all probably saying, thank God. The incident in my life that inspired this story is not a very pleasant one. I was going to see my friend, and on the way to his place, and I stopped at a Taco Bell, and I went up and I got my order, and then I sat down, and I was just the only person sitting there, and there were a few other people in the restaurant. And in front of me, standing, was a woman of around 30, her daughter around 10, very tiny, and a grown man probably in his early 50s maybe. He looked like a biker type. He had long hair. He was big. He was like 6'3", 250. He was grabbing at the 10-year-old girl. And at first I thought, well, maybe he's just kind of, playfully playing with her. But it just kept getting worse and worse. And then he said, I want to stick my tongue down your throat, to the 10-year-old girl. And all the while the mother was a few feet away, just looking at her phone, not paying attention. And I just sat there, and I was dumbfounded, and I was just, circumstance was I was so hungry, and I was on like the cusp of a low with my diabetes. I knew I was heading down. I'm only like 5'11" and 170 pounds. There's no way I could intimidate this guy or fight this guy. He would kill me, and but it was very disturbing. God only gives you so many of those moments in life where you have to act, and I was not ready for it, and I still regret it to this day. It happened about 5 years ago, and I still think about that poor girl, and I just didn't know what to do because the mother was there. Why she wasn't doing anything, saying, "Hey, I cut it out," or, what are you talking about? What's going? I wanted to go up to the woman and ask her, what's going on here? Is everything okay? But like I said, I was so hungry, and I was just, I just didn't want to get involved, and so it's like I kind of understand why people just shy away from those types of circumstances, because I wasn't ready for it. I just, you don't expect to encounter something like that, going to get some freaking tacos, and burritos. So that's sort of the inspiration of this script. Look Both Ways is the title of the script, and the main character is a mailman, and he has this similar circumstance happen at the start of the movie, and he doesn't know how to react to it, but it haunts him. A 16-year-old girl has gone missing that lives nearby. The grandfather asks the mailman just to keep an eye open, because he thinks this drug house that is nearby, that he thinks they're somehow involved in some way or another. Kidnapped girl, her mother and father are drug addicts, and they've moved away, helping out by opening the mail of this drug house, and he comes across information about drug deals and so forth. He gets more information as he goes along that they probably are involved in the missing of this missing girl. Grandfather going to the police and always looking for updates, and they don't really know what to tell him. And then you find out one of the detectives is corrupt. He's in contact with a drug cartel leader. Cartel leader pretty much says he doesn't know anything about this missing girl. Well, our mailman continues to snoop around, and eventually he comes in contact with a drug deal. This is another incident that I saw, and I implemented it into the script. I was driving along one day, and I saw a man with a backpack. He was in his 20s, and he took the backpack and put it like underneath like a railing type, fence type deal. He put it way underneath. He kept going underneath and into this field with high grass and everything, and then he walked away, and it was the weirdest thing. I wanted to go back and see what was in that backpack. It was so strange. Another incident but this one I'm glad I didn't go and do anything about that, because I want to know what was in that backpack. I don't know, but I put that in the script as well. And our mailman ends up encountering an FBI agent, and he has two Mexicans with him. He calls them my Mexicans, and you don't know at the time. You think maybe he's just hired these two Mexicans just kind of help him out and do his dirty work, but they also are two FBI agents. He also has a high-end sex doll that he carries around with him. He's a strange man. Inside the sex doll is where he hides drugs. Can't really trust. He dabbling in corruption, with these drug dealers in his own way. You don't quite know if you should trust him or not. Swindling the mailman. The mailman thinks maybe he can find this missing girl through this sex trafficking like network or whatever that the FBI agent sets him up with, and they just end up swindling him out of like $15,000. The drug cartel guy and the FBI agent at their wits' end, and the cartel guy tells the corrupt detective, you're going to have a murder in your jurisdiction, and you're going to pin it on this other cartel leader, which he agrees to do. But the mailman comes right before they're about to kill the FBI agent. The FBI agent is adamant that the cartel leaders spare his Mexicans, but all three of them don't get spared. And we think drug dealers is about to go and kill the mailman because he's stumbled upon something he shouldn't, but because he mentioned the missing girl, I'm looking for the missing girl. I'm not worried about the money that's been stolen from me and this and that. The drug dealer tells him that this girl is still alive, and he gives him an address that he thinks that that's where she's at, and he fires a gunshot into the air and pretends that the mailman escaped him. He lets him go, and all the while the mailman has a wife and 2 young daughters. The marriage is deteriorating because he wants the wife to infiltrate this drug house, and she wants to go there, she says, just to get pot, but she ends up doing harder drugs and becoming an addict herself, so the marriage starts to deteriorate. Now that they found out where they think the missing girl is, they decide to go out and find her. Do end up finding her, but right after they find her, they end up, both our main characters, our protagonists, end up getting killed. This is a big twist that I wanted to put on it to end sort of the second act of the movie. In the third act, we follow around the grandfather's son, who we find out has sobered up because he spent a couple months in jail and he couldn't get drugs there, so he sobered up, and he decides to go find his missing dad and find his missing daughter, and we find out that it was him and his wife who sold their very own daughter into, or just sold her to some sex trafficker for $10,000 worth of heroin. Unredeemable, which it is, in my humble opinion, but he goes to try to track her down anyway. He meets up with a sex trafficker who's called the Perv. That's all he's known as, is the Perv. Guy with, like, you know, some of those big glasses, kind of like a Jeffrey Dahmer type character. He ends up seeing his daughter in another car, so they just make eye contact with each other, and that's it. And tied up, they bound the son's hands. 2 cars are drag racing. Reaches over and pulls back with the ligatures, the driver or whatever, and sending the car spinning and rolling, and it ends up into a fiery blaze. So he gets his revenge on some of these traffickers, not all of them, and he only just saw his daughter. Well, should I give away the very end? I won't. How about that? We'll hold out on the very end, but I think quite good. I would give it 3.5 stars. I give it an A-. I had submitted this script to some screenwriting competition, I think it was the Titan, and I wanted their feedback, and they did not like this script. They were like, this would never make money. You can't have the 2 main characters, the good guys, be killed, you know, towards the end of the movie like that. And they said you can't sacrifice character development for the story itself or something like that. And once again, if you want to see something different, you gotta try different things, right? And I think it's more fascinating to have these characters, you know, once they've achieved their goal, you know, they finally found her, but immediately gets taken from them, and then you follow around an unredeemable character at the end who's trying, but he knows, you know, it's not going to amount to much, but he tries his best to redeem. Got a lot of weird twists and turns in it. The FBI agent is very funny, and he's got a few little speeches in it that are good, and the drug cartel guy is a very evil individual, but he doesn't do anything evil, right? He just kind of, he pulls the strings. He, you know, tells people what to do and what they have to do, but he never gets his hands dirty. I'm going to read one of his little speeches here at the end. The detective has just found Chloe Harper, who's dead. That's the ending. She's dead. She doesn't make it. The kidnapped girl. Alonzo says, how is she? And the detective says, I think you know. Alonzo says, when I first met Chloe Harper, she asked me, are you the police? No, I told her I was the man in charge. And the detective is like, what now? What happens now with all this? And then Alonzo says, and he's actually quoting the corrupt FBI agent here. He says, an old friend always told me the devil's work is never done. I know mine isn't, neither is yours, detective. There's an old adage, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You and I know this not to be the case. Power does not corrupt your character. Power reveals your character. Terrible things must happen from time to time, not to create total disorder, rather to restore order. I hope you will understand this, detective. So it shows you that he's rationalizing these evil actions that have been happening throughout the story. I find that to be compelling. I have one more script that I'm probably going to write. I'm not going to tell you about it, to which you're once again saying, thank God. And then that might be it. That might be the last one I ever write. It's like, I think people are interested in these dark stories, especially if there's authenticity to them. But I think there's a place for it, and it's not like these are the types of movies that would cost a fortune. So I don't know why more of these types of movies aren't getting made nowadays. Darker films, and as you've seen through these 20 scripts, I enjoy the dark side. I enjoy dark works. And with this essay film, it's just sort of my, either saying my farewell to my attempts at writing, my once love of cinema, and in a sense my last stitch effort to someday make a movie. As we look back on these 20 scripts that we've gone through, 6 of which are very bad, 3 of which are kind of mediocre and I'm kind of indifferent to, and then 11 of them that I like quite a bit. The Blind Run, you could burn that one. The Day That Never Came, not too good. Under the Undertow, may it never be spoken about again. And then we start getting to the good ones. Tragic Youth. Now if I were to make this one, I would be considered a pariah, maybe deservedly so, by many communities in this country and abroad. It would make for a hell of a movie, and I think over time it would be a bit more understood, and because it's happening so often with these school shootings and so forth. This movie were to ever be seen, you know, maybe it could be put to a vote which movies, or just one movie people would want me to direct, or one, you know, to Hollywood could help me make, because I could never finance any of these myself. The Midnight Killer, number 6 one, All Things Under Heaven, is pretty bad. Number 7, Small Time Player, is pretty good, and that one's kind of a small scale noir type. Number 8, The Strange Stranger, and I would make this maybe if nothing comes of this, and maybe if I get inspired to try to make a movie by myself, it would be this one, The Strange Stranger. The number 9 movie, The Antihero, not very good. Pass. People have spoken as the one comedy I've written, and the first sequel to The Midnight Killer is Hearts of Fear, very good. Hitman with a Heart of Gold, number 12, the end of the trilogy. My worst, one of my worst, The Jasmine, may it never see the light of day. Decent effort, number 14, Blood on the Tracks. Number 15, this would be an interesting first film to do, either this one or Tragic Youth. If you want people to throw rocks at me, you would say Tragic Youth. But if you want people to be disturbed and not quite understanding where I'm coming from, would be Jumping the Shark. Number 16, Day of the Dragons. This would be one of my last efforts, and people may want to murder me after that one. Number 17, Lucky Gun. Number 18 is A Man Out of Time, the 4th entry and first prequel to the Kevin Cortez saga. Number 19, No License to Kill, is the 5th and final installment. And then my last project, Look Both Ways, would be another one to maybe make first as well. Just a good, gritty drama. A lot of material in there people don't want to touch. But I'll touch it. I'll touch it. I'm not afraid. As you can see, I don't care.
Live after cinema day, you know.
That was fun.
Crazy.
I feel like you could be a vlogger for real.
See, I can't research something. But you really hear after cinema day. Today was a crazy day. I ain't gonna lie. Today was crazy. You know.
How's everybody feeling? Your thoughts on that matter, Nayeli? No? Don't worry, it's not a real camera. Yeah, it is.
It's really gonna be like the last time I'm gonna really feel before we close. Oh, Isaiah was right here. Will back here. Johnny's gonna be on her shit.
Wait.
Yeah, look at Mark.
No, you can't.
He's a professional. Chloe on the phone.